What's good, what's good? Get with y'all this morning. Let me tag some, let me get everybody in the room. Good morning. This morning I want to chop it up with y'all about a couple things. It's 3 videos I'm gonna show y'all and then have a deep convo. My thing now is that I realized that that I wanted to give y'all certain things that I was able to find instead of just talking about it. So when we build on these things later or in future times, regardless of the people asking questions or texting in, you know what I mean, or that time in, I wanted to be able to give y'all some substance. So this morning, what up, bro? This morning, I'm gonna start y'all with Dr. Sebi and why letting him talk about this case that everybody act like it didn't, like everybody don't understand so much. So I'm gonna start y'all with Dr. Sebi this morning, and then we're gonna build before we go to the next video.
Not then, but I know that money was not my pursuit. Huh? We were 12 years of age, 1945. I'm 72 years of age now. In 1994, a young man by the name of Tom Flowers came to me and said, "Guess who is coming tomorrow?" I said, "Who?" "Kirby Brown." I said, "Well, if I remember correctly, Kirby said when we were 12 that he wanted money.
Chance, what up?
I hope he made millions of dollars." I don't have any millions. I don't even have $1,000. Which I don't. But that's okay. I live. I found that avenue, or it was shown to me how to live. Not to read books, because everybody reads books, but yet society is deteriorating more every day. Everybody reads books. The brother called the other day on the radio and said that he asked about corn, right? Corn? He read books. He said that the text, the Kemetic text showed him that corn is good. Well, he better examine his text, because corn was made by man. But anyway, Kirby said he wanted money. That was a Thursday. Tom Flowers said, "Kirby is coming tomorrow." So I said, well, if Kirby didn't make his millions, I'm going to remind him that we're alive. We are alive. Kirby didn't arrive. Kirby would never arrive. They had to take axe to chop the hotel door down. Kirby died of a heart attack. Kirby weighed 390 pounds. Kirby wanted money. He became a cab driver in New York. I didn't want any money. I didn't want it then or now, because it's not important in your life. It was never important in our lives. The Maya showed that. The Maya built pyramids. The Maya lived for millions of years in the jungles of Central America. No money. The Africans? How long did we live in Africa without money? Since creation. Now they tell us we need money to fight AIDS. Brothers and sisters,
What's good, Mo?
we are at a deficit, a tremendous deficit, a deficit that if we do not pay attention, I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did, because I remained that obedient boy that just lost his mama 4 days ago. I listen. I listen. But to listen, you can't have a philosophy in your head. If you have a philosophy in your head, you cannot listen to anyone. I was there. I was a Seventh-day Adventist. I listened to no one but those things that came from the church. Well, if I were to listen to the church today, the Seventh-day Adventists, I'd be eating tofu. I'd be sick. You see? I'd be eating tofu. If I had gone to school, I would have become a medical scientist. I wouldn't have been able to cure AIDS because they do not. They don't cure AIDS. If I had listened to all of the philosophies of Europe, I would have never been able to find the answer to the cure of diseases. But today, I'm going to share with you the African wisdom, the African brain, the African genesis, the African resonance, something that was never taught to us in the schools. Well, why should we expect the school to teach us something that would enhance our growth and save our lives? Why should the school teach you that? When in history has there ever been examples to show that one race of people is indebted to another? That has never been. Then you tell me that the white man is a bigot. The white man was never a bigot. He was never a discriminator. The white man is a person that obeys the first law of nature. Self-preservation is the first law of nature. So the white man, whenever he proceeds to preserve his race, and we sit back and say he's a bigot, it's only because we have lost it and we don't even know how to get ourselves out of this mess. I'm one of them. I'm you standing here. One day, it was to be that your brother would be shown something that would change the profile of things. I left my country, where I was born then. In 1953 to New Orleans, I became a merchant seaman. I was 20 years of age. As a merchant seaman, I became an engineer 5 years later. I'm a steam engineer. Don't ask me how I did that, because that's going to baffle you, because I've never been to school, and I don't read books. I don't read books now, nobody's book. I'm not even going to read my own. Because all the book readers come to me, asking me, how did you cure AIDS? Well, that's like asking the gorilla, hey man, how come you keep yourself healthy without a hospital? How come you don't have any medicines? We begin. I became a merchant seaman right quick to take you through my life. Left Honduras without going to school, became a merchant seaman, became an engineer, worked for the County of Los Angeles as an engineer. While as an engineer, the County of Los Angeles, something is to happen. Something is to change my life completely. First, it was a Mexican. The Mexican said to me, you're dying. I said, I know. How do you know? Because I fell out going to the bathroom a Sunday afternoon, and I didn't reach the bathroom. I got up off the floor. Something must have happened between there and the bathroom. But I had gone to the neurologist, the endocrinologist, the GER practitioner in Russia, in England, in Germany, in France, United States. And there were people that knows what it is about. They had the great big books on medical science. But my asthma, my diabetes, my impotence was kicking. What happened to the books? They read books. All the physicians that treated this boy read books of all kinds. Nothing happened. I goes to Mexico, and the Mexican have a goat in his house. Every 5 words it was bad, bad. And I'm looking around. The Mexican said, the goat bothering you? I said, no. You're dying because you are disobedient. Then he brought the Holy Bible. Honor thy mother and thy father, that thy days may be long upon the land. That's in the Bible, isn't it? But how could we honor our mother and our fathers when we don't even know what they were about? You don't tell that to an elephant, to honor his mother, because when he's born, he follows his mother and watch what his mother eats. Do you and I know what our mothers ate in Africa? We don't know, yet we dialogue. We dialogue on this level of intelligence because I know Plato, I know Aristotle, I know all about Diogenes, but you don't know what your mama ate. So everything that you talk about means absolutely nothing. So you see where they have us at a deficit? That's why we need each other's. Now when I became an engineer, the Mexican said, stop eating. Don't eat anything. For how long? 3 months. I said, are you crazy? He said, no, you nuts. You ask me if I'm crazy. You've been eating garbage for 30 years you've been eating garbage, and I'm going to remove the garbage for 90 days, and you ask me if I'm crazy. What was I eating? Hog maws, chitlin, neck bones, crackling bread, lawn in New Orleans. Eggs, because the grown-ups told me when my penis wasn't getting hard, eat eggs, drink raw eggs. And I did, by the dozens. And nothing happened. The Mexican said, don't worry about it, don't eat. 90 days later, I was no longer impotent, no longer diabetic, no longer asthmatic, no longer with glasses on my eyes, and this stomach hair was 42. What happened to the science that the physicians were using, medical science? It didn't work, isn't it? But it worked with me. The herbs work with me. This Bible says, in the book of Revelation, it says 22 verse, and the first chapter, it talks about the herbs for medicine. Am I right? Well, ladies and gentlemen, what could have happened to us that when my brother, who's a preacher for 30 years, was sick, and instead of going to God's medicine, he went to the physician to get a chemical in his arm. My brother died 21 years ago. I'm not a preacher. I would never be a preacher. I told that to my mother. She wanted me to be the preacher. I said, no, 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 no. That would be the last thing that I would consider. She said, why? I said, because I want to live truth. Even if it kills me, I'm going to live truth. And truth is, the Bible says that the herbs are for the healing of the nations. But the preacher, when he gets sick, he will get a chemical. What is the message he's sending to God? Come on, just be fruitful. Let us be truthful today. If never again in our life, let us be that today. Why do we go to see the doctor to give us a chemical when the Bible says the herbs are for the healing? Why do we go? Well, you're going to soon find out. That's what affected me then, and probably affecting me now, to a great degree, more than I would ever realize. Because remember, I want to go to the blackboard. Roughly speaking, Africa. Way overhead, we put America. They are 4,500 miles. What happened between here and here? A lot happened. You see, when we were here, without the mathematics, without the ABC, without the sciences, when we were here, we had something to our advantage that we no longer have here. We are blind here. Here we weren't. We were seeing. Why? Because God provided us with everything we needed here. And none of it was come free or rice and beans. There were no tofu. There were no soy there. There were no cows. And there were no hogs, no chicken. There were no flour. Those things didn't come from Africa. You see rice and beans and flour and cheese and meat and the starch that you eat, they all came from right here, from a laboratory. Now, for us to eat, you have to have in your big skull the understanding of biochemistry. But when we were here, we didn't have to know anything about biochemistry. Why? Because God doesn't make poisons. You see, God doesn't make carrots. Well, let me put it here. Stop the garbage. Anytime someone tells you that tofu is good for you, that someone that just gave that information to you has one eye open. But he's confident that when he tells you to eat carrots and you drink it, you have both closed. So a one-eye man is king where everybody's blind. But the one that recommends the tofu is only half seeing. He's blind. He got one eye open only. But he doesn't know it. Example. Before we get into the real lecture, pull this out. This is how people take privileges on us. They don't care about us. They bring us information that, oh God, that's why the rest of the world laugh at us. Because they know that we have both eyes closed. Here it is. Moringa. Moringa has 23 times the iron in spinach. Spinach has iron? No, because spinach, let me take my time because there's a whole lot of information. I don't want to jog it up. Anything that has a pH of 7 plus is alkali. Anything that has less, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, is acid. Spinach. Acid. Why compare moringa with spinach? When spinach has a starch base, it has no iron. 7 times the calcium in milk. Milk has calcium. Well, I stopped drinking milk 42 years ago, and I could fall on my knees. You drink milk with moringa because they said to mix it with milk and some pages here. You're not going to fall on your knees at 73. You're going to leave your knees down there. 11 times vitamin A that you find in carrots. Carrots has vitamin A. Carrots belongs on the acid side of life. So right there, and they say to mix with carrot juice. Why would they do that? Then up here, they talk about the Ayurvedic system of medicine. Recommends moringa. The Ayurvedic is Indian. The Ayurvedic system of medicine recommends cow milk. The Ayurvedic system of medicine has never cured any disease, nor moringa, nor any other system in the world. You know what this is like? When Steven Seagal tells me to come to his house because he had a headache for 5 years. Well, I knew why the headache was in his head. It was removed in less than 10 minutes. He had the bottle and said, "This bottle is powerful." I said, "Yeah, powerful, huh?" She said, "Yeah, the headache is gone." You know, he's the Dalai Lama, right? He wanted me to go to Kathmandu. Kathmandu? I'm going to go to Kathmandu. To do what? Talk to lamas. Lamas for what? What am I going to talk to lamas for? They couldn't cure your headache that you had for 5 years. The lamas need to come and see me, not me, the lama. But since we were compromised, we left all our food in Africa. You and I don't even know what we ate in Africa. So don't even go there. But we have the opportunity because one of your brothers happened not to go to school and look outside of the paradigm of school and found something altogether different. And what did I find? That anything that God made is on the alkali side. Why? The molecular structure is complete. It was made by nature, not man. Anything that God made has no starch. That's another thing. Anything that nature makes has no starch. Anything that man made has to have starch because starch is a binder. To titrate two unequal chemicals, you have to use a starch. Starch is not a food. Starch is a chemical. And what have we been eating since they took us away from Africa? Starch and blood. Starch and blood. We didn't need blood in Africa. Gorilla doesn't need blood. He eats leaves and berries. But gorillas are sane. They listen to each other, and they have a society well put together. Well, Sebi, when he became the engineer, and he found out that the pH value of things had a lot to do with healing, and the properties that's to be used, I was happy. I used to run home. Guess what I found? I found that the herb that everybody's talking about is acid. And everybody's using it. What herb is that? Comfrey. She said, what? I said, yes, it's on the acid side. And so is rose hips, enchirecia. What about golden seal? That's right, golden seal was made. It's like the stick that you put in your mouth, they call what? What they call it? The chew stick. What they call it? Liquid stick. Everybody have liquid stick in the mouth, right? But liquid stick was made. It has 50 times more sugar than does sugar itself. It has glycerinic acid. You see, we didn't have to study biochemistry in Africa because everything we had there was on the alkali side, so we could eat anything. But when they brought us here, you know, put some clothes on now. And after they put the clothes on you, come here, boy. You got to get in front of this classroom. You have to learn this ABC stuff. But hold it now. Gorillas doesn't take their cubs to be trained by polar bears. Gorillas train our own cubs. The gorilla way. But no. You and I, our parents couldn't do better. They had to take us to the school because they wanted to save us, you know, protect us, because that's mother. Mother doesn't want child to suffer. So mother was shown that if child didn't go to school, and they'd be illiterate, and the society is made up where you must go to school if you want to buy a Mercedes. But in our society, school, what you mean by school? We don't have such animal. We build things. And those who've been to school can't even build the pyramids today. Not in Honduras, not to mention the pyramids in Mexico. They're 4 times the size of the pyramids in Egypt. Oh, yes. I know Ben Joker didn't talk about that. But that's okay. Because he need help like I need help. We all need help. So the school that we thought was going to be so equitable, so useful, has become a deterrent. Because those that been to school doesn't cure anything. How did I learn and I didn't go to school? Easy. You know, we baby-aged kids. We don't die. Right? We do it. I'm not wiser than you. I may be more mischievous than you. I know that because I do some mischievousness that you would not believe. But anyway, as an engineer, I went to work one night and I began to test herbs. And I begin to see that all the herbs that you guys are using are acid, every single last one of them, except for burdock, yellow dock. They're natural herbs. And the other one, which is the red clover, that's a natural herb. You know, they're alkali. They're very good. So I begin by compounding herbs from all over the world. And lo and behold, a blind man was killed named Mr. Fredericks. Then the Japanese, Fred Takashita's wife was killed of endometriosis. She had a baby. She was never supposed to have a baby. It's a white lady from Utah. My boss brought his daughter and his brother with ulcers. They were killed. The boss came to me one afternoon and said, "So you're going to leave me?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You're going to leave me? On your resume, you said that you didn't go to school. And the only reason why I hired you is that I was curious to find out how could a man have an engineer license, never been to school. I wanted you to fail. But instead, you did something that is extraordinary. Are all black people like you?" I say, "Brett Howell," his name is Brett Howell. "Are all black people like me?" I say, "I'm the dumbest." "Yes, they're all like me and more powerful than me." "Well, how come they're not doing what you're doing? You killed the blind man. You killed my daughter ulcers. Could they do that?" I said, "They could do it better than you, than me. But why are they doing it? Because they're afraid of you. I'm not afraid of God. I'm not afraid of the devil. I'm not afraid of anything, especially you. Because I don't live in fear." So I say, "Brett Howell, the black man of America is afraid of you white people because you guys made him afraid of you. And you should not feel good about that. It's not about me hating white people, loving black or hating black. It's about understanding. Nobody's going to help us but us. Nobody in this world, whether white, black, Chinese, or Arab, could help us. It's impossible for them to help us. Why? Because they don't know us. They're not of our genetic predisposition. Look, as a Christian, I used to eat pork. Of course I eat pork, and I love it. But as a Muslim, I eat lamb, which is 10 times worse than pork. So what do I do? Who do I turn to? So after I quit my job, the boss said, "Wait just a minute, because I think you're crazy. You're leaving your job as a steam engineer in 1980, when herbs in 1980, I'm making $2,900 a month. I'm going to leave my job with 10 years seniority to come after some herb that you didn't like." Why did I do this? I had to do it. It wasn't that I could see that far. I can't see beyond my nose. Talk about years ahead. But I had to quit my job. And I had to question myself, why am I doing this? But I did. And 1980, the boss is looking at TV, 1987, on the 10th day of February, and he see CNN, Alfredo Bowman, a.k.a. Dr. Sebi, is arrested for practicing medicine without a license, selling product approved by the FDA, and claiming to cure AIDS and other diseases, which is a fraudulent claim. The boss saw that. The boss' wife is in the bathroom because he told me the story himself. He called her out, come and see the man that's arrested. If he says he cure AIDS, I know he cure AIDS, because Bret Howard knew that I would never compromise myself to a lie. When I talk, I know what I said is the truth, but I also know that in America, you could also be dead right. But it doesn't matter. It does not matter. I'm 73 already. They kill me tomorrow, it's all over with. I rather reach 73. My brother, who was a preacher, he only got to 50. But I stuck with you, the black woman. That was my success. You, the black woman. I always kept my eyes on you. Nobody else, not the maid, because I'm one. We don't do nothing. We can't do anything. We need you. Because it is you that held our hand. It is you that breastfed us. My mother breastfed me for only 4 years. But that was sufficient. In 1962, two statements was made in a barbershop. 1640 Claiborne Avenue, New Orleans, Louisiana. Timothy Barbershop. Tim Barbershop. Ernest Morial walked in there when he was a lawyer. And every time Ernest came in the barbershop, we used to jump on Morial. I mean, we used to kick him around the place. Morial said, you see you niggas? One day, I'm going to become mayor. And I'm going to remember you, Alfredo. That's me. The big mouth. I'm going to have you in jail. Ernest became the mayor of New Orleans. I was in Los Angeles, and the most hurting thing in my life was when I heard that Morial had passed with asthma, a disease that I used to suffer with, that I was cured of in Mexico, and that I have addressed so many times. Morial died. Ernest Morial. Then another statement was made by me in that same barbershop. I said that I would give the black woman a gift. Brother said, Logan said, Sapphire? I said, yes, Sapphire, your mama. I said, she was the first, you came out of her. She held your hand. She teach you everything about the basic things of life, and then she cut you loose. Now she worth nothing. She's Sapphire. I'm going to give her a gift. 1962, that statement was made. But 1962, I was sick. I had asthma, I had diabetes, I was impotent, I had everything under the sun. But in 1964, I was cured, and years went by. Then I found out this is the gift to the black woman. The healing that I found is in your hands now, black woman. Yes, it's in your hands. So in 1987, I was arrested. And while I was in jail, I was the happiest man in the world. Because when I was 40 years of age, I was going to work, and I passed by Miss Louise Wright's house on my right, and I made a statement. I'm going to help humanity. And here it is. 1987 is the showdown. I was arrested. All of the people in New York that were healers, I don't need to call their name. They said, yeah. They got the big mouth. They were angry with me because I put an ad in the Village Voice and the Amsterdam News and the New York Post. AIDS has been cured by the USHA Research Institute. And we specialize in cures for leukemia, sickle cell, impotent, blindness, cancer, and others. Well, after all, I did it. Shouldn't I advertise it? You should be glad your brother's doing that. Because now you have a chance to share in the bounty, right? That's the way I felt. So I'm in jail and I'm wondering, how is the American Medical Association going to escape from this one. You see, in the past, herbalists, when they talk, shh, gotta be quiet. Gotta talk under the table, because the physician may get you. The FDA gonna get you. But we seem to forget the one basic thing. When they remove us from Africa, did they bring our food with us? Did they? Well, how could the FDA have such kind of power over us now? Come on now, just wake up to it. So I stood in jail thinking, how am I going to do this one? This is going to be a heavy number, but it's nice because I wanted this moment. I wasn't going to back down. What you mean, back down? I'm representing some black woman. I never had a father. I never had a man in my confines to tell me something. No, I never had a stepdaddy. I had a woman. And then another woman, my grandmother. My great-great-grandmother lived to 124. Her name was Elizabeth. And she lived 70 years without a man. My great-grandmother lived 112. She lived 68 years without a man. My grandmother died at 100. And she lived 50 years without a man. My mother died 5 days ago. And she racked up 40. My mother died while I was coming to see you. I didn't turn back. You know why? The relationship with me and my mother was one of love. And she would have never wanted me to be there. My brother told my mother when I was about 10 years ago, he told her, yeah, you didn't like me. You didn't give me any love. You didn't give Fred any love either. That's me. So my mother said, what you say? You gave all your love to the pastor, not to Fred and me. My mother said, like, Fred, are you in on that? I said, man, this boy was talking garbage. See, he told me he's serious. I'm never serious. I don't know what it is to be serious. I hear men talk about seriousness. Well, I don't know what you do with that. But my mama said, raise your hand up and open your fingers. Which finger would you elect to take off of your hand? I said, none. She said, thank you. My mother turned to my brother and said, you said that I didn't give Fred any love. Fred, you wanted my love? I said, no. Didn't want it. I didn't need it. Because my mother knew if my mother ever interfered in my life, I've been upset. I was in the streets by the river all the time. My mother all mother knows the child that need her love, her attention. But she love all. But she knows the one that need the attention. I didn't want my mother attention. And she knew it. But my brother said that she didn't give him any. But the boy went to the 3rd grade. He owns a fishing fleet. He owns an ice factory. And he owns that she didn't give him any. But the boy went to the 3rd grade. He owns a fishing fleet. He owns an ice factory. And he owns a fleet of planes. And he said that his mother didn't give him love. You see how we could easily make mistakes? Okay. Mother is mother and will always be mothers. The greatest gender on the planet. So while I'm going to court now, and I'm standing, the judge said, get the man out of jail, and I went to his chambers. Judge Shorter said, young man, you mind if I ask you a question? I said, no, sir. Why did you advertise that you cure AIDS? Well, sir, my mother's alive, Africa exists, and my face, and I would never offend any of the three. That's why I advertise that I cure AIDS. He turned to the woman at the desk and said to her, ask her, did you investigate this man before you arrest him? She said, no. Her name was Phyllis Spade from the Attorney General office in New York. She said, no. You didn't investigate this man before you arrest him? This man, the response he gave me, he cured AIDS. But AIDS is the easiest thing to cure. People think that AIDS is difficult. To me, everything is easy. And to you, it should be too. And I'm going to show you why it's so easy. So the judge said, well, you out in bail. And that was February the 12th, I got out of the 13th. But the case doesn't begin until 88. September. I have a year and 8 months. Why the judge gave me so much time? I would never understand. So I waited. Trial date. This is where the showdown with black and white. Not better or worse. We are not better than any white man or Chinese, no. We just happen to be different. That difference has never been treated by any religion or philosophy. There is a difference that need to be understood. So while I went into court, the judge said, well, Dr. Sebi, will you please begin? Where do I begin? Begin where you say you cure AIDS and the physicians say there's no cure. The physicians are 100% right. There is no cure for AIDS or any other disease. The judge said, just a minute. There's a contradiction here. The newspaper says that you cure AIDS. Then you agreeing with the physicians. That's a contradiction. No, it's not. When you're limited, it is. But when you live out the box, it isn't. She said, help me. She said, of course. The physician take the position that there is no cure for AIDS or any other disease, and the physician are 100% right, according to their philosophy and their perspective. Their medicine didn't show them a cure. So how could they say that there is a cure? But the perspective that prepared me, there is cure for AIDS and every other disease. Oh my God, when I said that, the physician jumped up. Your Honor, Dr. Victor Herbert said, Your Honor, what other perspective could there be? After all, you know, this patent on us, the FDA has a patent on us. You cannot talk. The FDA talk, you shut up. Oh, yeah? Well, I'm going to find out. So, the judge said, what perspective is yours? Dr. Victor Herbert, Dr. Bonanno, and Dr. Christopher said, how could there be another? I said, there is another, Your Honor. And what is the other? The African bioelectric cell phone. I've never heard of such a thing. That's what the physician said. He have never heard of the African bioelectric cell phone. I said, of course. But we have to remind the good physician that he have not heard of a whole lot of other things. But that doesn't deny the existence of the African biomineral electric cell phone. What is it? Okay. The allopathic claim that there are multiple diseases. The African biomineral balance negate that position. There's only one disease, never been two. The allopathic claim that to treat the multiple disease, you must use a chemical, which is violating God. Right? The African biobalance said no. It's a nutritional approach, electric food. Your Honor, I told you that this man was insane and unscientific. He said there's only one disease, but there's only one. Remember, I'm the boy that didn't go to school. I'm going to break things down to the least common denominator. When I was a steam engineer, I found out that in a machine, thermodynamics I'm talking about, or an automobile, the only thing that could cause this machine to go bad is what? Short circuit, obstruction, overheating. The same thing with the human body. So what did I do? I put compounds together that would cleanse the human body of what? Of mucus. In so doing, AIDS, sickle cell, lupus, herpes, blindness. It sounds too simple, right? Well, that's not my fault. They have complex things, and then they deal with the complexity. And boy, that's a job. But with us, on our journey from Africa to America, it was easy because the slave master had a ship and brought us over. But getting back to Africa, we get confounded. We can't go back now. We don't know how to go back. We better not even go back. Because when I tried to go back, this is what I did. My first trip with a passport was to Kenya. So I went to Kenya and they said, where your passport? I said, I have no passport. I said, I was taken away 500 years ago. I'm back. When I left, I didn't have any passport. So why are you asking for a passport now? Is a passport African? Put it one side. They put me one side and sent me back out. But you think that was bad? That was a bad way. May I have that? I go to Africa. I go with my wife, and I said, well, boy, I'm happy. Girl, we're going to liberate Africa. We're going to do something for mother country. I go out and I saw Dr. Parinyatwa in Zimbabwe. I said, Dr. Parinyatwa, I think the problems are over with. Not only Zimbabwe, all of Africa. Here is Hospital Vicente di Antoni, is an Italian hospital. Department of Blood and Laboratories. Oswald Zavala, HIV positive on the 25th of November of 1993. 17th of January of 1994, HIV negative. This boy named Alfeo Lagos, this from the Red Cross, the Honduran Red Cross. It says here that this boy, it doesn't show any date of which he contracted AIDS. Why? Because he was born with AIDS. But down here it says he's negative on the 19th day of January of 1995. Another one. This one caused a laboratory to call for me. I thought it was funny. This is the next one, the other one. His name is Alex Suarez. On the second day of January, this boy of August, he found himself with HIV positive. On the 19th day of August of the same year, 17 days later, the boy is no longer HIV positive. So they called me for what? I don't know. Because I know they're not going to change it. Now, this one you're going to like. This one is from the San Diego Public Health Laboratories. It says here that this man has a HIV-1 RNA 26,205. The boy was supposed to be dead at 25, right? Just go to the other page. 6 months later, he's less than 400. He was killed at 15. So anybody want to read it? Because I could be lying, because that's the way we think. But here it is. No, that's possible. I could be lying. Here, young lady. So, curing AIDS, don't sit and look. That's the easiest thing for niggas to do. We could do more than that. Curing AIDS, to them is big thing. To us, it's nothing. You understand? But now, here is where this little culprit comes in. Where did I put it? The blood, no good. Here it is. Blood and starch. Blood and starch? Blood and starch is going to prevent you from doing what the ants does for each other. Ants when it's getting ready to rain, you know what they do? All the black ants, they begin to do what? Cut the leaves and take them to their little nests. Ants doesn't eat leaves. They eat the mycelia that grows on the leaves with the temperature. They are farmers, but they provide when it rains. Red ants does the same. But we black people, we can't do that. Because when your brother showed the world that he cured AIDS, why didn't the African countries jump on it? All the African people eat is blood and starch, nothing else. But that is the Africa that you and I dream about. The Africa that we want to save. The Africa that we all love. I found out that there is no president in Africa that is interested in the cure for AIDS. Not one. No, I'm sorry. Only one. I'm not going to name the country because I may jeopardize the country. Because the one thing I learned, that when you begin to talk favorable about a country or individual, they're going to soon get him. That is a fact. So I cannot talk about the country that said to Dr. Sebi, Dr. Sebi, whenever you want to return to Africa and begin this new empire, you have 5,000 acres of land and 6 hot springs. I don't need anything else. Hot springs? 5 hot springs with 5,000 acres of land? We could grow food. We could make the best dress. I said, sir, I am not going to come to your country unless I'm able to grow marijuana. He said, marijuana? He said, wait just a minute. He said, I can't do that. I said, well, the compounds I've been giving your nephew that was autistic, that now is talking, was marijuana. And as for you is concerned, when I came here, you weren't walking. You were dying. No, you're running up the steps in the presidency. Yes, marijuana. That's a God's product. That's not cigarettes. You see what happened? My brother used to smoke cigarettes, but my brother didn't know that the tobacco that he was smoking was artificial. God didn't make that. But marijuana, God did make that. So it must have been a good reason why I was told in school that everything God made is good. Well, I know that. I live that. And I always will smoke it for as long as I live. Why? Because I have that right. I have that right. It's not everybody that uses it, from autism to arthritis, is cured, because everything that God made is good. So as I go to Africa, all happy, I came back with my tail between my legs, because it ain't happening. It ain't gonna happen. They're not interested in that. But the one thing I noticed today and yesterday, and you may have heard it, President Clinton and Sanjay Gupta, they found the end of AIDS. How could they find the end of AIDS when they have not found the end of diabetes, the end for sickle cell, the end for any disease? But they're going to tell us that they're going to bypass these lesser diseases and jump on the major one, and they got the cure for it. I got documents to substantiate that I cure AIDS, right? So what's up? What's up? Well, I'm going to show you what's up. When I was in Zimbabwe, the Department of Health said, why do you come to us saying that you could help us? And your leaders in America didn't help you. My leaders in America? What do you mean by that? They mentioned Minister Farrakhan. I said, just a minute. I don't follow any man. I follow women. And I don't follow sick people. Because if I follow sick people, then I got to be sicker. I go to Brazil. They say, why don't you, if your leaders didn't help you, why should we? I said, my leaders, again, they brought these leaders in front of me. And they mentioned something like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. I said, oh, God. I said, why you all ask me about these people? I never knew of Jesse Jackson or Al Sharpton or Oprah Winfrey promoting something that is equitable and good for the black community. That's never been. What they could do is march. That I know. But why do you ask me about it? I'm asking you, why can't you incorporate this in your repertoire? You said me, I have no leaders. My leader's my mama. The biggest testicles that anybody I've ever seen, they was on my mama. So don't ask me about leaders. I don't follow leaders. I never was part of that thinking. I don't need anyone to lead me someplace. So now I'm asking you, what do we do now? I cure AIDS. Are you going to call Oprah? You don't need to. She could advertise 1 million pieces, broken pieces, right? But that's fine. But she cannot advertise the cure for humanity. But there's one little dude that got himself in trouble. And he was totally unaware of what was going to happen. This little dude, I'm home with my wife, enjoying myself, a Sunday afternoon, looking at TV, somebody threw a rock on my window. It's Randy Jackson. What did you want? My brother want to see you. Your brother? Michael? Okay. I went. Well, he's sick as hell. Well, I treated him, and he got cured. He saw it, and he was encouraged to take me to the Rayburn building on Capitol Hill. Oh, my God. This is going to really confound you. Michael Jackson took me to the Rayburn building on Capitol Hill on the 31st day of March. April. No, of March. March. It was March. 31st day of March of 2004. I said, why are you taking me there? Because you cure AIDS.
That's the same day Nip died.
I said, but what makes you think that they are interested in that? What makes you think that the world is interested? I don't care if it's any country in the world. They are not interested. Especially Africa. They were never interested. AIDS isn't killing Africa. Hepatitis C is killing Africa. All of West Africa is red line for hepatitis C. What you talking about? But they're Muslims. So they have to eat the Muslim food, which is goats and lamb. Go tell them that the Arabs pay food, which is goats and lamb. Go tell them that the Arabs played a trick on their brain. You cannot do that. Me, I remain the son of the jungle woman. The jungle woman that didn't have any clothes on. Yeah, I am her son. I stuck with her and she liberated me. You have to hear this. One morning, I woke up and I heard the music that was playing. You know how you turn your radio on and you're sleeping, but the music on the radio would influence you and you dream that you're seeing the artist that's playing, right? You ever had that happen to you? This morning, I'm listening to John Coltrane. 4 o'clock in the morning on channel 850 on the TV. I'm sleeping, and I'm hearing John Coltrane playing Interstellar Space. But then something was happening while this music was playing. I was looking at a black woman doing this from behind a tree. I woke up, and I didn't know how to interpret that dream. But then I was leaving that morning for Los Angeles. As I got to the airport, the governor was there. The governor said, "That's him. That's the man that cured Alcida of leukemia. That's the man I'm talking about." The governor had a lot of people around him. So I went. I was leaving for Los Angeles. He was leaving for the capital. He didn't know that we were going to meet that morning. So they was talking to me and asking me questions. Finally, two men that were standing away from me, they were white men from the United States. They came up to me and said, "Well, we have heard of your miracle cures." I said, "Sir, I don't even know what a miracle is. Especially perform one. I just happen to cure leukemia. That's not a miracle. To you it may be. Because your school of thought have you to believe that curing these diseases is one great big feat. No, it's simple common sense. I'm an African. Now this is where the naked women are going to come out. They said to me, "We have heard of your miracle cures, but have you been saved?" You see? Right there, I consider that an imposition. Why do you take the liberty to believe that I'm one of those that have accepted your philosophy that I have to be saved? I say, from what? The man politely answered and said, "From your sins, of course." I said, "Wait just a minute." I said, "You know, man, while you guys were standing over there, I said," and I looked at you both, and I said, "Two very intelligent young men. But now I have to question that." He said, "Why?" I said, "Well, because the color of my skin should have prevented you from asking me that question, have I been saved?" He said, "What does the color of your skin have to do with anything?" I say, "It has to do with everything. I am the son of a woman that was taken away from the forest of Africa. To begin with, she didn't have any clothes on. But she didn't have any alcohol. And she didn't have any prostitution. And she didn't have any supermarkets. And she didn't have a hospital. And she didn't need anything that God didn't make. And she didn't have any money. So all these things constitute sin. So my mother in the jungles was sinless. How did I become sinful?" You cut it out. You stop that. We have to begin to change our diet, because this diet here of blood and starch is all we eat. That is all we eat. And then with this diet of blood and starch, which confounds their hormonal structure, we have the nerve to tell each other's, "Brother, you were wrong." I'm wrong? I mean, where did you get that from? I'm wrong. You've been eating blood and starch, and you're going to tell me I'm wrong. No. We got to stop it. Because the blood and starch is why I couldn't penetrate Africa. So, you forgot, right? I'm in the Rayborn building. Who is present? Sheila Jackson Lee from Texas, right? John Conyers, Illinois. Or Detroit? Jesse Jackson Jr. from the House of Appropriation. Our most beloved President Bush. No, we have to give him credit. And no African government ever given me the privilege to practice herbology. Bush did. Bush appropriated $5 billion to fight AIDS in Africa, right? And the African government didn't appropriate one dime. They didn't want their brother to do it for free. So Bush stands out way above there. Bush gave $5 billion, and Jesse Jackson Jr. is there. So when I go to the podium and I say, fellas, y'all don't have to look for the cure of AIDS anymore. Here it is. Jesse Jackson Jr. did this. I said, I'm going to talk about this. I have to write about this in my book. Because you, not me, but you and I believe in the leaders. We hope that they could do something, right? Well, they had a chance. So 17 African ambassadors, only one came to me from Mali. The only man came to me and said, Dr. Sebi, I have to respect your position, and I appreciate your position. You have proven that you cure AIDS, and I would like for you to go to Mali. But that's not the country we're talking about previously. He just presented himself that day. But Jesse Jackson Jr. didn't tell you that I cure AIDS, right? He didn't tell his daddy either, isn't it? And Miss Sheila Jackson Lee didn't talk about it, right? And so did John Conyers. So who gives a damn? You see? But that's good. That's good. We don't need leaders, isn't it? So we're going to do it. Because we're doing it now. Because those black women I'm talking about, there's one sitting there. They are going to tell the world we cure AIDS. But last night, Clinton and Sanjay Gupta is on CNN talking about the end of AIDS. How about the end of sickle cell? How about the end of lupus? How about the end of herpes? How about the end of blindness? They didn't find those, but they find the end of AIDS. How is that possible? Are we going to buy that too? Are we going to let them continue to say that there is no cure for AIDS when your brother is curing it? So we are guilty. We are the one that's guilty, not the leaders, because they're sick. All the leaders are sick. You can look at them and tell they're sick. So we have to forget about the leaders, right? So which animal in the forest follows a male? None, right? They all follow females. So how did we begin to follow males? I mean, that was the most, look, the one thing I wanted in my life was a woman laying by me as my significant other or my wife, that she didn't have a God or a devil in her brain. That woman is sitting there. Because I could not have a woman laying by me and she worshiping something else. I mean nothing to her. No, you worship you. That's who you worship. That's who we worship in the forest. And we were doing quite well because none of us, her children, could talk about how long did our parents live in the forest of Africa. You don't know. For millions of years since creation. Did we have money? We live a perpetual vacation. Now I gotta wear this stupid suit on. When I didn't have to wear any clothes. But now just to live, I have to have a $15,000 suit on, a $5,000 shoes. I have to have all kind of stuff on me. And then I qualify. Do you have a master's degree? Man, I didn't go to school. Oh, put him aside. So in essence, there's no one on this planet that is interested in the cure for any disease. None of the leaders, none of those who were talking, they are not interested. It was simple. It was understanding that is alkalinity that cures, not acidity. And any healer that comes to you with these things, like adding carrots, like moringa, it says here, One of the things that I are careful with, it says here, if you add carrot juice with it, it's going to help you. But just a minute, carrot was made by some dude in Holland. It's very acid. So this moringa knows that you have both eyes closed, so I could sell you anything. We don't want that anymore. We don't want to tell stories anymore. We don't want to protect the stories anymore. But you see what happened? When you have been healing or call yourself a healer for 20 or 30 years using comfrey and rose hips and recommending tofu, and someone come on the set and says that you may not be quite right, man, you get off there. You begin to get crazy. You begin to go crazy in that person because you have invested 30 years and people know you, and now you can't turn back and say, I was wrong.
Was good. I wanted to bring y'all that video. It's a long one, so I know so we'll chop it up. Now, it's a couple more things I wanted to show y'all, but I really brought that to you because we hear a lot right now about people talking about the Dr. Sebi case, but I feel like we never get a chance to hear Dr. Sebi talk about it himself. And I was digging and digging and digging for this video because they really don't have that video. You know what I'm saying? It's very hard to find the videos because after he died, a billion people started tweeting about him or YouTubing about him. So all of that shit buried like his real videos. You know what I mean? But it was the name of that is Dr. Sebi Eat to Live, and put full length in caption. You know what I mean? But he was just explaining that when he was talking about being an engineer, the reason why him being an engineer was so important in his learning is when you do an engineer, like especially somebody that works like in a factory with them big machines, like all of the machines in the factory are designed off the human body. Like the transmission and all of that stuff is like your digestive system in the body. You know what I'm saying? Like how it intakes gas in a car is just a digestive system, right? So him being an engineer, one day he said he went to work and he noticed that in that department that the only thing that could stop it was overheating or something being in there clogging it. And he realized, because he was already studying the plants, that he had figured out that there's only a few things that can happen to a human body. So that's what got Dr. Sebi on that. And I'll let y'all figure it out because that was a deep one. Now, it's two more. Now, I usually go up here and lately I want to show you Booker T. Coleman when he talk about the Moors and they travel. And then there was another one about the history of the Olmecs because you never see stuff like that as well. So I figured me understanding the biggest thing when you're dealing with anything with the audience is if you learn to educate the audience, because when we have our conversations, whether in the future or tomorrow morning, if we've all kind of had our eyes on these things, then we can build and we can all have conversations on different levels with understanding at the same time, not being afraid to show you the sources of information, which a lot of scholars won't show you this because they want you to follow them. You know what I'm saying? Or you know what I mean? They want you to go behind them. But as you see, I don't think it's any scholar that I will show you who has gotten this information it's like you can't be but so woke unless you know the order of nature. And like he said, what animal in nature follows a man? None. So let me go, we're gonna hit the next one. No, you know what? I wanted to show y'all this one. Oh, they all gone. Give me 1 second. But yeah, I wanted to give y'all, because I know I usually a lot of times show y'all a lot of videos of men, but it was somebody very important that I wanted to show this morning. So I always gonna touch on history and the relationship of black people. And when I came across this, it was an old video that I remember. She was from Hidden Colors, but one of the most powerful women.
What I have actually said is that the black woman's disrespect and rebellion against the leadership and the authority of the black man is a direct cause of the breakdown in the black family structure. It's not an attack on us as black women. It's just saying that in the breakdown of any relationship, both parties have to take responsibility. And as black women, we have been protected and insulated from any kind of examination about what our share of the responsibility is in the breakdown of the black family. my book represents the first platform, certainly, that the black man has ever had to air his grievances about the black woman, because no one would ever listen to him. They have only listened to us.
Can you tell us a little bit about the book itself? What brought you to this point of having to sit down and use your pen to write this book?
Well, actually, it was my first book. In 1985, I authored How Not to Eat Pork or Life Without the Pig. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I was going around doing what I was calling Get Off That Hog lectures. And during my travels, I noted that I would take the microscope and show people how you can't kill the trichina worm in pork by cooking it. Heat was not destroying the worm, and I would show them, the difference, and demonstrate how FDA was now using radiation to try to kill the worms in pork because cooking was not working, which is what we had always been told. And during that time, a lot of black men were in agreement to get off eating pork. They wanted to change their eating habits, and they were happy to find out some information that might possibly save their lives. But it was black women who were the most adamant, who refused to change meal planning techniques, seasoning food, cooking techniques. And so I said, it's interesting. I said, if we are refusing to provide the black man with the proper physical food when we know that food is what sustains life, then what else are we withholding from him? Possibly there are some other areas, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, that we are affecting his behavior by what we do or what we withhold and refuse to give. And that led me to try to find out. We've always heard that the black man leaves the black family, abandons his woman and children, won't take care of the children, won't work, stays out all night, turns into a drunk, takes drugs. We've heard a lot of negative things. Most of them are true. But I wanted to find out what happens before he gets to that point. What leads up to the breakdown? We've never gone back to try to find out what happens in the relationship between the black man and a black woman that makes him go off and do all of these bad things. To assume that this is just normal, natural behavior for black men would be to assume that he is naturally bad. And I do not believe that the man that God gave to us as a mate is a naturally bad person. And so I wanted to try to examine what goes on with him. What's his side of the story?
Did a black man ask you to write this book?
Oh, no, certainly not. I think they were just as surprised as black women. Many of them approached the title of the book with a little apprehension because they have not had a champion. We have never had a black woman who actually stood up and said, I'm standing up for the black man's side of the story. We know what our side is, and both sides are true. We have done some very dreadful things to each other. And I don't exonerate black men, which is kind of a misconception that people have. I just say that we know his side. What about our side? And we do have a side. We have adopted some wrong standards. We are judging our men many times by the wrong value system. We are using his children sometimes against him. We have been told that the only benefit that a black man provides in a home is money, and if he does not give us money to take care of those kinds of financial provisions, that he has no value. And what my research has proven to me is that a black man, any man in any home, provides much more than financial support. The man provides guidance, instruction, discipline for the children, which we sorely need in our black homes. He provides gratification, fulfillment, protection. I mean, there are so many other values, and these values are the ones that are missing in our children today, which is why many black children are in the street, out of control themselves, disrespectful, don't have any regard for anyone. And most of us are scared of them, and everybody else is, because nobody has a way into them to try to gain any control over them. So I maintain that a return to traditional family values, certain clearly defined gender responsibilities for black men and black women in running a home and a relationship will help us to produce a better child. And if we produce a better child, certainly we'll have a better future and a better nation.
And saying all of this, and as calling yourself a champion and having, if I may say, the courage to write this book and stand by it, you've caused a stir. This book is very controversial. What are you hearing from public reaction?
Well, I don't think that it's an issue among black women about whether or not the book is true or not. The issue is that I was not supposed to tell. These are inside secrets and things that we have never let our men know about. And many times we say? He can't handle me. Well, many times he can't handle us because he doesn't know what it is he's trying to handle. He doesn't understand what motivates us. We have become very adept, many of us, at being able to do something right in front of his eyes and then convince him that that's not what he really saw at all and that it didn't happen. So we've kept him kind of confused.
Excuse me, do you realize that there are many bookstores, and in particular black bookstores, that have refused to carry the Black Man's Guide to Understanding the Black Woman?
I think that that's been overblown. Right now, the book is carried in over 5,000 bookstores here in this country and about 2,000 abroad. The book is becoming a bestseller in London. And to date, we only know of 2 bookstores in the entire country who refuse to carry the book.
May I tell you that there is at least one in Tallahassee?
There may be, but
and
they're lost if they're doing that.
The response we got from that book owner was that your book had nothing, absolutely nothing constructive.
Was that a woman who gave you those comments?
Yes, it was.
Oh, how surprising. Okay.
See how low the views got? You see how low these views got? But it just goes to show you, see, when we dealing with certain things, right? And then at the same time, if it's a man, see, people love seeing a man teach. But if I play a woman, certain things change. Even with women, they tend to want to have this conversation. Not all, but you see how the views change.
Let's talk about some of the things that seem to be upsetting people that people are talking
there
about.
There certainly have been a lot of things taken out of context. Anyone who's ever looked at me or seen, witnessed some of the talk shows, they actually exploit a lot of issues. They take them out of context. They want to sensationalize them to build up their ratings to have a good show. So I really appreciate this opportunity to just sit down and have a fireside chat about the book.
Well, I'm glad you're
without
here.
all the fireworks and everything.
You say black women, and I quote you as saying, nag, nag,
Yes,
nag. And that
we
we
do.
are essentially responsible for pushing our men away by doing so.
A lot of times, we take a position because of our own emotional mechanisms. We harass our men too much. We nag our men too much, and we keep his mind and his head so bundled up and bogged down with all of our personal idiosyncrasies about our day-to-day personal relationship with him that a lot of times we don't free his mind up to go out and to plan sanely for our future and for the future of our children. Many of them come to us every day, and they almost have to do a wind test. They don't know what's going on. They don't know who they're going to meet because we have a lot of reactions. We tend to think as black women that a successful relationship and one where we're happy is one where everything goes our way. And the first time it goes another kind of a way, then we go into hell, turmoil in our brain, and we start deciding, oh, I've got terrible problems with this man. He won't do what I want him to do. When our men have a side.
Let me give that side according to Shahrazad Ali, okay? You say in your book,
okay, let's
and
get
I'm quoting you, okay? The black man in America is the only male on earth, including every continent, who is disrespected by the women in his nation.
That's true.
This situation does not exist anyplace else among the billions of people inhabiting our planet, except here in America.
That's right.
The other black men, the yellow men, the red men, the brown men, and the white men are all honored and respected by their respective nations. All other women recognize and accept that the man is the authority, the ruler, and the leader. Only here in the United States, in the black nation, scattered throughout the United States, is the black man neglected. That's pretty powerful.
And it's absolutely true. We have been displaced. A lot of us don't really understand what slavery actually did to us and how much psychological trauma it did to us regarding what our proper roles are with each other, what our responsibilities are as man and woman in our various communities and relationships. We have never been debriefed from slavery. Not really. We have just, we know we had that history, but we don't know how it affected us. We don't know how much of our actual culture we lost. How much of our ideas were taken from us. We know that our religion was taken from us. We know that our names were taken from us. But we don't know how many other standards of day-to-day life have been removed. And while we have adopted the American way of doing things, they have not worked for us because we have a very special situation. We are not the same as everyone else. And a lot of the people who want us to pretend that slavery didn't exist or to forget about it, they've never been a slave. So they don't know what we're going through. They don't know what this has done to us. It has made us as black women insecure.
Why not? Well, that's true. Why not take up for us? Why not write something that says we
we've had
need
everybody
that?
to take up for us, and we've always had books about black women. how great and how strong we are. And we are that. I'm just saying that we have used our strength in the wrong direction. We have used it against our men instead of standing up for them. And if we start to support our men and to speak a good word for him publicly, then so many people won't be able to come against him and tear him down. And he won't have to feel so frustrated. And he won't be outside away from us looking for peace of mind with women of other nationalities, because we actually want our own black man. We need him back in our homes, and we want to have one. We're just living in a culture where they're trying to convince us that not only do we not need a man, but there's some other options to having one. And those options mainly are celibacy or lesbianism.
There's an old saying that says, charity begins at home and spreads abroad. And
Absolutely.
in your book, you say that we are not bringing up our daughters and our sons in a correct manner to respect their fathers.
No, we're not. Unfortunately, as I say, since money has been used as the measure, many times if a black man does not have money to give us, we won't even let him see his children. We won't let him spend any time with it because he does not give us whatever the child support is. And I'm not saying that we don't need money to raise a child, but I try to explain to black women that raising a child consists of much more than feeding, clothing, and sheltering it. That's maintaining one. To raise one, you need a return of the parental coalition of the father and the mother to put the proper values into the child. Many of our boys, when we raise them alone, they grow up with the female emotional mechanism. They are suspicious, they are doubtful, they're disrespectful of womanhood, they're bitchy, they can't make a decision. And many of our girls who grew up in a home where there's no man present, they go out into the world and try to mate. They don't have any idea how to live with a man day to day, how to prepare a proper meal, how to be a mother, how to just be in love in the home. Most of what our people and our children especially have learned about how you have a relationship, they learned off of television. And television doesn't represent our needs. And so a lot of the confusion has come, from outside agencies that we have not recognized just how detrimental it has been to us as a people.
Can I play devil's advocate for just a moment?
Well, I wish you wouldn't, but I know you must. Go on.
What if I am a good wife?
Mm-hmm.
His home is clean. His kids are fed. I'm making sure they're well educated. I help them with their homework. I'm a good lover in bed. I help him with the finances, and I say, look at that. He still took a walk.
Well, that's something else that's been confused about my book. I advise black men and black women. I certainly tell men that if you are with a woman who you have been with for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, 6 months, 2 weeks, whatever it is, and that woman refuses to cooperate with your ideas, does not want to get with your program of right, whatever it is, then I tell those men, get rid of that woman and get another one. And I tell black women the same thing. If you are with a man that you cannot be in agreement with, then get rid of him and get with a man that you can be in agreement with. If the man you're with is not treating you the way that you want him to, and you feel that you have put in enough time to demonstrate your commitment and your sincerity of efforts to try to make the relationship work, I don't tell people to just stay in that relationship. I'm trying to teach us that we waste a lot of time being angry with each other and being dissatisfied in relationships. Get out of it and get with one where you can be happy.
You say that the black woman would like to be a clone of the white woman.
Many of us, yes. That's unfortunate.
How do you see that?
Well, that's something that was almost accidental, I'd have to say. See, the white woman has been the only mentor that we have had of a female. We've seen her every day of our life on television, every magazine, every newspaper, every commercial. It's just been her face, her body, her image, whatever it has been in front of us. And so today we have the results of that. We have black women who are trying to dye their hair blonde, who are wearing blue and green contacts in their eyes, who wear tons and tons of layers of makeup, who have changed their voice, who have hair weaves so they can have flowing long hair blowing in the wind, like Brooke Shields or somebody, And so that's been an accident. And as a result of us doing that, we have also adopted the women's liberation movement goals of wanting to be liberated from the man and have some kind of pseudo-equality, when while that may be true of the white woman and her plight with the white man, that's not really the black woman's business, because we haven't been under the control of the black man for over 500 years. So what do we have to be liberated from him from?
Is there something wrong with trying to make yourself look better or more appealing?
Well, it depends on what standard you're using as being the goal of looking better. If we think to look better is to put on a ton of makeup and have blue eyes, then there's something wrong with that. But if we think that to look better is to certainly get a better spirit in our heart and to work every day to become a better wife, a better mother, better friend, better sister, then those values and attributes alone will make us more beautiful than we are now.
How do you feel about the fact that many people accuse you of wanting to see the black woman at a point of submission? Is that where you want to see a black woman in the 1990s?
Well, it depends on how you define submission. Those words have a tendency to have a negative connotation for us because of how they were used against us during slavery and what we connect them to. But actually, the kind of submission that I'm referring to just means cooperation and agreement. I don't think that anybody could say that I represent a woman who is subjugated in any kind of way. I don't think that anybody could say that my personality sounds like some man has me somewhere crawling around on the ground or walking 10 paces behind him. So I'm not representing that. I'm representing strength. I'm saying that we have a lot of power. We have power to make heaven and hell for our men. And I'm saying, let's try making heaven. Let's try to build him up. If a man has his woman behind him, he will believe he can do anything. And all we need to do is to get our men to believe that they can do anything. And he'll be able to, do much better than he's doing now and come out of the pitiful condition he's in. As I said, I'm not exonerating him. I'm just saying that all of that strength that we have, let's use it in a more positive way instead of just going for self. Nobody told us that all of that being my own person and I'm independent would lead to separation and loneliness. But that's what we had to trade for that. In order to have certain kinds of success, we had to give up the man because we can't find a man who will compete with us on that level. As I said, we say he can't handle us or he's intimidated by the fact I make more money than him. I think that by judging our men on how much money he makes, we have lost a lot of good men. Because as black women, if we decide that all of us are going to just determine whether or not we're going to have a man based on how much money he makes, then none of us have no man.
But
because most black men don't have no money.
There are many men
Not a lot of money.
There are many men out there who don't want a woman.
That's absolutely true.
Who is not gainfully employed.
That's
just
true.
Works both ways.
And one of the things that I have always explained about that, Raven, is that for my lectures, which I do all over the country so I can give black people some ease and take some hysteria out of our communities that the book seems to have caused, I have security guards. Not because of black women. We're going to do just what we do. We're going to fuss and we're going to cuss or do a little something, But I have it because of black men. Because the black man's guide to understand the black woman puts the black man on point. And it reminds him what he has allowed to happen to his woman and his family. Many black men become intimidated. They don't want to take responsibility for their women. They don't want the challenge. They don't want to be put on point. So they become overwhelmed. And it's them that go off. That's why I have security. Because most men know that this book puts the black man on point. It just talks about what slavery has done to the black woman, but it's really telling him what he has allowed to happen.
Let's go back to the book for just a moment. According to you, there are 3 types of black women.
Yeah, they overlap a little bit.
Can you define that just very briefly for us?
Well, we have, I kind of number them, I think, as 1, 2, and 3, and I would call them lower class, middle level, and so-called upper class, and we certainly have to acknowledge that we have those levels in our society. We see them every day. That is not a put down to recognize that we have a lower class woman who perhaps lives on the street, who is an alcoholic, a bum, who is outdoors, who is subject to abject poverty as because of a lack of education and proper training and personal hygiene and other kinds of information. She exists, and we need to reach her and try to raise her up differently because many of these women have children, and we have to be responsible for them. We have the mid-class women who are the number 2s, and they're kind of average. They try to do better than the lower level. And then, of course, we have the number 3 class, which is the so-called successful, black woman who is tripping about the fact that she generally has a big job and a credit card or something,
Don't you want to see black women accomplish something?
Yes, I absolutely do. But if we can't accomplish saving our race, then we have not made an accomplishment. We are looking at our man become endangered. He's already endangered. Over 60% of us are single, widowed, separated, or divorced as of last year. And so we're not together. And there is one monolith in the black community, Raven. If we don't reproduce children, then our nation, our race is going to die out here. And so we sometimes tend to look at black men and say, yeah, they're in this bad condition, and we act like they're going to die out and we're going to live on. But that's not the way it's going to go. If the black man dies, all of us are going to die because he actually is the backbone of our nation. We can't produce a baby by ourselves, and going into other nationalities still just erases our nation. And I'm trying to get us not to do that.
You have problems with interracial marriages.
Yeah, I'm
Why?
not for that. Well, because of the fact that I think that God made a male and female of every nationality so that they could mate and reproduce. And I think in our particular case, a lot of us try to run to what I call race denial by trying to marry into other nationalities to try to get away from our own heritage. Many black women do that, and certainly many black men do that. So I'm trying to get them to get back together and stop trying to marry and go into other races and infiltrate them with some of the nonsense that we bring as a result of our sad slavery history.
What if a woman says to you, well, I was alone, and he came to me at a very vulnerable point in my life, whether he's Hispanic or from the Middle East, or he's
Caucasian.
white, and Caucasian, doesn't matter. And she just says, he came to me at a very vulnerable point in my life, Shahrazad, and he's good to me, and he takes care of me.
It's not necessary for people to confess to me. I tell people all the time, I'm not taking a poll. This book is about self-examination and personal development. And if after reading this book, she thinks that she is still in the right place, then I don't have any control over that. I'm not out here as a judge. As I said, I haven't set myself up to say I'm the perfect black woman. Everyone should be about me. I have the same problems that all the rest of y'all got. I'm just trying to work with it. And this book is so brutally honest. We've never had anybody just straight talk to us about our personal problems, what happens inside the black home after the door is closed. And we have had a tendency to think that it's some kind of secret, that nobody recognizes, that we don't get along. And we tend to think that somebody's going to pick this book up from some other nationality and think that all black women are like the women that I describe in this book. That's totally impossible, because the things that I describe are visible and they're audible. You can see them or you can hear them. So nobody's going to mistakenly think you do these things if they don't see them or hear them coming out of your mouth or out of your actions. So there's no danger of people thinking that all of us do this.
Shahrazad, there are a lot of women out there who think, you don't like us, you don't like black women.
Oh, yes, I do. I love black women. I'm a black woman myself, and I got 5 daughters and 4 sisters, so that would, be ridiculous of anybody to assume that. As I said, we have just never had anybody challenge us on our behavior. We've never had anybody to say, well, let's look at what we do. We know what he does, and he's wrong in a lot of what he does. But his wrongness, his guilt, does not ensure our innocence. We have a share in the problems that we have in the black community. And just because we are dressed up and have a job does not mean that we don't practice some aberrant behaviors that end up infecting our homes and breaking up our relationships with our men and helping to hold him down. That's all I'm saying. So everyone can look at themselves. Every man can look at his own woman. This book has brought a lot of people together. This book has reunited a lot of couples who now understand what happened in their relationship. It's required reading in 15 historically black colleges and 10 white colleges. Everyone must study what slavery did to the black woman. We have never looked at it as an independent study.
May I ask you, on what do you base your information?
Just research. Being a black woman myself, living here in the country, and I interviewed over 3,000 people. I interviewed 379 black men who were married to or dating white women, over 100 black women who were married to or dating white men, and a little over 2,000 black men and over 1,000 black women. And what I found is that we don't have a control group. There was no point in me listing all of their names, because we don't have one set of Negroes that we could point at and say, okay, well, this particular group is not affected by slavery. All of us are affected by it. We just have not been able to identify the manifestation of that behavior and be able to trace it back to what the root was and how we got that way. A lot of the behavior we practice because it's trendy, it's popular in this country, and so we think that that's just the thing to do.
Do you fault the black man for anything?
Yes, absolutely.
Briefly,
I fault him for lying.
For lying?
Yes.
About?
All kinds of things. He won't tell us the truth about his life because he knows that we can't handle the truth. And so he will lie to us about his activities and his life because it preserves the peace for him, he thinks. But we know that lies don't build a relationship. They create doubt, suspicion, and fear. And then we exhibit those behavior traits. And fear in the female is always translated as hostility. And so, see, it's a locked-in circle that I'm trying to get us to look at how these things are connected and what they produce. A lot of the anger and frustration we have at each other is really not even at each other. It's about our conditions. It's about something that's almost been genetically sent down through our womb because our men were not able to protect us. They were not able to keep the slave master from snatching our babies out of our womb, to allow us to have food or clothing. A lot of different kinds of things that happen to us that just make us tremble. They make us frightened. And so now it's to a point where everything that the man does, we have our total emotional balance, our self-esteem, our self-respect, everything that we stand for as a female, we have it tied right now to our men's genitals. And it depends on what he does with those about whether or not
Let's talk about that for just a moment.
See, this is an intense topic.
Yes,
I just never get a chance to explain
One
it.
thing that I read over and over again in your book was
I know what that is.
regarding infidelity. And let me just make this here. You say in your book, there is no history of the black man settling down with one woman
Right.
and never desiring to have another. Before slavery, during slavery, or after slavery,
That's
the black
just the
man
truth.
has never been recorded to have just one woman.
Right. Well, I think there's some actual facts we can look at on that. Monogamy has failed for the white man in America.
But this is like saying it's okay.
It's not me saying it's okay. This is how they're living. I'm giving you the history of what their life is. Black men haven't been waiting on me to tell them it's all right to have more than one woman. Neither have white men. This is just what they do. I'm not talking about fornication and adultery. I'm not talking about one-night stands and running around rampant with other women. That's not the kinds of when I say more than one woman relationship. I mean that before we came to America, our men had more than one wife and family. And we were satisfied with it because we had not met the monogamy idea. We had not met the American white woman, learned envy and jealousy. All right, after coming here, those kinds of ideas were bred into us because of society and the mores that the Americans made up here. And so then we started to have problems with that. But I think that since it is apparent that most of them, not all of them, it's certainly up to the man, do love more than one woman. I got tons of mail. A lot of black men write and tell me that they have had two women for 5, 10, 15, and 20 years, and they can't even get the women to speak to each other. Sometimes they have two families,
Would I want
two sets of children.
Would I want to talk to a woman who's sharing perhaps the bed and the money and the social life with who I would deem as my man?
If you want to deal in reality, and if you are not insecure, and if you don't think that that robs you of something, you would want to know them. If he loves her, you certainly should want to know her.
There are a lot of black women out there who say,
Oh, I know
"Sister,
they're mad about that idea. I understand,
That would
And that's
never
not
hold
easy.
water.
Wait a minute, and that's not easy. And that's a frightening thought to most of us. And I don't like that. I'm not for that. I'm in agreement with everybody else. Our men ought to just have one woman. But that is not the reality. I'm trying to get us to deal with some reality for a change. Stop dealing with fantasy. Stop dealing with television. Stop dealing with imagination of how we wish things were. Let's deal with them how they are, what it is, present tense. And
But
if we
because
deal with
that's
that,
happening
then
doesn't mean I have to like that or
no,
want
that
to
means
accept
that you can live in hell. That means you can live in doubt. That means that you can always be checking on your man. That means that you can be insecure and be, tearful. And that means you can be disappointed when you find out the real truth. And you don't want to have that in your life. None of us do. But in order not to have that, then we have to deal with some reality and recognize that men are not limited in the way that women are. Men are able to love more than one woman. I'm not talking about, as I said, just a random sexual relationship of fornication and adultery and all of that. I mean that there are many black men who have children by more than one woman. What is to become of those children? They need their father.
Now, you say that once these relationships don't work and they start breaking up or things start going bad at home, you say, she will cry and seek sympathy. During this period, the black woman will remind the black man of everything she has ever done for him.
Yeah, we do that.
She will try to make him feel guilty and ashamed of his decidedly outrageous behavior.
Absolutely.
She'll let the house go, and I quote you, to hell.
That's right.
She may stop cleaning, ironing, washing, and cooking.
And we
neglect
withhold
his place.
sex. That's a real tool we use. We do that.
But if
to
you would
express
cheat
our
on me or
dissatisfaction.
walk out
Well,
on me...
see, that's what I'm saying. We have to get into definition. Who told us that was cheating? Where did that idea come from that that's cheating? And I'm not saying that a lot of men are not just running around. I'm not talking about that. But if a woman finds out that her man has been with a woman while she's been with him for 3 or 4 or 5 years, that's a serious commitment in relationship. And if it hasn't taken anything from me, if I'm not going short of anything, and if this is what he thinks his responsibility is, then what kind of hell are you going to go through to prevent that? Since we cannot stop him, We have not been successful. The white woman has not been successful in stopping the white man from having another woman. They call them a mistress. We pick up a lot of that terminology. But a man who has 2 women, that's not necessarily a mistress. That's just his other woman. Now, we got 2 choices. We can be the woman or the other woman. We don't have but those 2. Now, I know we don't like that. I don't like that. But that's the reality of our life at some point. Now, it's up to the man. But every man doesn't want 2 women, but those that do, they're going to do it.
What about our morals and our religion?
Whose religion? Whose morals? Not our religion, because we're not practicing the religion of black people anymore. That was taken from us. We don't have our morals anymore. That was taken from us. So whose idea are you representing when you stand up for those values? Not ours. Somebody else's. Some other nationality. And it may work for them. But it doesn't work for us. It hasn't worked for anybody, really, but nobody wants to deal with the truth. Monogamy was only created because of the economics of it.
The Black Man's Guide to Understanding the Black Woman has been out for, what, over a year now?
March the 20th will be the first year anniversary. And for that anniversary, I'm releasing my new video. And the video is called The Black Man's Guide on Tour. And it is exciting.
I would assume it's pretty hot.
Yeah, it's hot, I tell you.
After writing this book, just take a moment before you answer.
Okay.
Do you regret anything about what you wrote? If you had the chance to do it all over again, would you perhaps soften some of the things that you said?
No, that doesn't require any in-depth thought. I've been asked that a lot, of course. No, I wouldn't, because, see, we always want some kind of instruction and help to come to us that doesn't affect the status quo. We want somebody to tell us some information or give us some instruction that doesn't require us to change. Okay? Mm-hmm. This book requires change. And one thing this book has done that I have really been pleased with, it has certainly reopened communications. And a lot of us as black women, because of what here seems like it's just so radical, are willing to make a lot of concessions now and cooperate a lot of other kind of ways to keep from having to do any of these things that I list in here. So I have letters from black men who just write and say, listen, thank you. My wife is cooking better meals now. I have letters from children that say, thank you. My mother quit her second job. She's home with us now at night. I have had black men walk up to me on the street in New York and reach out to shake my hand and say thank you and just burst into tears and say, thanks, hey, I thought I'd never live to see the day.
Not to jump on your case or anything here, but just to say in defense, how many of those women are afraid of an open-handed slap in the face? You've been accused.
That's a terrible thing.
You have been accused of advocating violence.
No, see, that's a misconception. I'm trying to stop violence in the black community. Now, we know, Raven, that domestic violence is at an all-time high in the black community. Black men currently are kicking us, blacking our eyes, knocking our teeth out, stabbing us, shooting us. They're doing a lot of horrible things to us. All right? So what I'm trying to do is to put some direction on that. One of the problems we have is that we don't know that change happens in degrees and stages. So if we just tell our men, don't hit women, they're not going to do that any more than they're going to say no to drugs. That doesn't work in that way, just to give that kind of instruction. So let's first put some controls on it. Let's get our men to recognize that they don't have to go off and brutalize us with their fists and hit us with weapons and kick us in the stomach and hit us in the breast.
But it's okay for him to hit me with his hand?
Wait a minute. I'm saying that if I can stop black men from kicking and shooting and stabbing and stomping black women and get them to just lightly tap us in the mouth, I will have saved a lot of lives and preserved a lot of families.
What kind of logic is that?
Well, they're not going to stop doing it completely. Now, let's deal with the reality of the statistics. 40% of our women are brutalized. So I'm trying to get the men to stop doing that to us. The Red Cross suggests the same motion, and nobody's ever jumped on them. If a person gets hysterical, you slap them in the face to bring them back around to reality. And I'm not even saying a hard slap. And let's go over that, because that's something that's confused all over the country. I'm so tired. That's the national anthem of black women. Now, at first I thought they were really upset, but I think it's been kind of a smokescreen. They're trying to use that to get black men not to read the rest of the book. Okay, this is what it says. If the black woman is brutalized repeatedly, the relationship will fail, and the black man will possibly be arrested and charged with cowardly abusing a woman. This is not the goal. Make no mistake about it. No black eyes, no punching in the stomach, the breast, no stomping, and no uppercuts. Analyzing the options available to the black man when the black woman's mouth, verbal abuse has been proven to be just as violent and harmful as physical abuse. When her mouth becomes uncontrollably disrespectful, they total only a few. He can walk away from her, leave the house, and get drunk. We know men do that. He can go to his other woman and complain. He can quit the relationship, leave the woman. He can try to argue back and lose. Nobody can out-argue us, okay? Or he can seek counseling or sympathy from friends. Now, those are the only options any man has when a woman is running off at the mouth to him. Or he can offer her a sound, open-handed slap in the mouth. That doesn't go from point A to Z. There's a lot of other options in there that our men use. I'm just describing what happens. Ordinarily, when he gets to that point 6, it's not a slap, it's a brutal hit with a fist. I'm trying to stop him from doing that to us. And I'm trying to get us to control it differently.
No kind of violence should be advocated.
Well, that's not advocating violence. The violence is already going on. I'm trying to stop it. I'm trying to put some controls on it.
Shahrazad,
and that's something that people don't understand.
You are a mother.
Yes, I have 12 children.
How would you feel if your daughter called you at 2 a.m. in the morning and said, Mom, he hit me? Now, you're a mother now. You're a mother.
Well, I'm not emotional like that. I'd have to say what happened. Put him on extension and let me find out what happened.
There are many
Now, that's not happening. That's why I love her.
women out there who would like to know, are you married?
Of course I'm married.
Not because he hit her or nothing like that, but because in today's time, one of the biggest problems in our relationships and love, when there's a problem in the household, the mother and the family will just jump to the woman's side and nobody finds out the truth. How can a relationship work if ain't nobody holding them to the truth?
Yeah, now you know I'm with being with a man. I'm not ashamed to say I need a man. No, I need a man. I'm one of those with men. I had to have a man. I am not ashamed of that. My first husband died in 1985, unfortunately, of a heart attack. And I have a new husband now. And I've given the children to him. And we're raising them, and he's a very beautiful man. He's not afraid of me. He's not intimidated by me, and he knows me, and he has read the book. Okay, he is in agreement with my campaign, and all of my sons are in agreement with this. I have 7 sons, and they are very beautiful and very talented, and it's very interesting to see how, as a result of me teaching them differently, the girls that come there, they don't run the same game on them. You know, like they can't come into our house with the mini skirts on. Mm-hmm. They can't come in with the skin-tight clothes on.
You are Muslim, may I add that?
Oh, of course, okay. But I'm not teaching our people religion.
Okay.
They already failed that course. I wouldn't dare try to teach black people religion.
But does that influence the way you
Islam
instruct
influences everything that goes on in the black community. Because that's what we were before we were brought here as slaves. So yes, it certainly has influenced my life.
Can I jump back?
It's not a book on religion, and I don't bring it into it like that.
I want to jump back for just a moment. You said there are 3 kinds of black women. Where do you fall?
Probably somewhere, the categories overlap, probably between the 2, 3.
And how do you criticize yourself?
Well, as I said, I work every day to be a better wife, better mother, and I have not said I'm perfect. You know, I'm a victim of all of the things just like all of the rest of us are. And I don't say that all black women do everything in my book. None of us have lived long enough to do everything in the book. But all of us do some of them. And every time that we do them, then it serves to break up our relationship and run our men away from us. When that's not really what we want at all. We really want him to run toward us. But sometimes we function in such a way that makes him be outside, looking for peace of mind with somebody else because we withhold the peace because we're mad at him about something, you know. I go around trying to tell black women if one of the things we can do for our men is just smile when we see him coming. You know? If you get with these ideas, the first thing it'll do is relax the muscles in your face. You won't be so uptight all the time. It'll make you beautiful.
What are you teaching your daughters regarding to this philosophy?
That to be able to judge things on an unemotional basis, to try to go by the actual facts of what is presented to you instead of how you feel about it. Our people in general have a problem distinguishing between actual fact and opinion, and we think we have an option to reject the truth based on how we feel about it. And the truth doesn't change just because we feel a certain way about it. It remains the truth. So I teach them that.
Is this book semi-autobiographical?
Oh, absolutely not. Excuse me. Absolutely not. No.
But doesn't the average person that write a book, there's a little bit of him somewhere in what
I'm the writer here. You the TV host, and writers do not do that. You can write about anything you want to. And the only thing I regret is that I didn't write the Black Man's Guide to Understand the Black Woman Part 2, because there's some more. This is just all I put into one book. But I'm coming out with the Black Woman's Guide to Understand the Black Man in 1993, probably.
Well,
The name of this is Vibrations interview with Shahrazad Ali. Now, she was on Hidden Colors. Beautiful mind. I always remember the first time I ever seen her. Now, she's a beautiful woman, but her brain makes her look like God. And not just because of this. I mean, you can watch anything. She talks history, anything, any place you want to go. This is a well-studied woman, right? But very strong-minded. So if you think that that Shahrazad is just super passive, no. But it's a choice to self-educate. Just like with men, we can't just sit there and pick out the problems of what's wrong with our women without hearing our men and the people who really got them brains to be honest. That's why you see a lot of times I know that I'm talking to women live, because at the end of the day, they need to know that there is somebody who they can be honest with, and that's not going to put their pride on the table and be able to smile and laugh it off. And rather, if I consciously might let people see that there are men out there with these brains that they have made y'all believe are not out there. But Shahrazad, one of the craziest. She has a lot. You know what I'm saying? Now, what I was going to go to, give me 1 second, to end this out with the video aspect, because I hear a lot of people wanted me to play something from Booker T. Coleman. Very good teacher. But what he's going to give you, I want you to see his teaching style. Give me a second. And then we're going to end this last video with history. And afterwards, we're going to talk about it.
Whether or not you're up to the par is your business, okay? You missed a train.
Let's get it.
For thousands of years, in the depigmentation process, ice mountains were created. Ice mountains that did not allow Africans to return back into the southern lands. Therefore, they had to retreat into caves and put clothes on. When what is known as an interstadial came, which is a warming trend of the Ice Age, they then found the ability to begin to move further south. As they moved further south on the other side of the ice mountain, where it had been a temperate or a very warm climate, when they got down into the real southern lands here, coming out they met people of different backgrounds. The great majority of them of African descent. Whether you are in Mesopotamia over here, whether you're dealing with any of the Saudi Arabian areas, this is why it's so important to understand that the Eurasian as we know them today, the essence that made Saddam Hussein light complexion was called the Jectanides. Jectanides. That is the formation of the Eurasian coming down, meeting these individuals in Mesopotamia, and getting a first concept of what culture and civilization is. They still couldn't get it too good because they started wars, because this was their manner. They were a very violent people. They were a very dominating people. And so they were kicked out of every town they went to as they were traveling west, and finally they find themselves in Cana, and then they cross over, which then brings this Eurasian into Kemet, and for the first time you see Eurasians in Kemet. This did not happen during the Old Kingdom. This did not happen. This happened during the first intermediate period. The Africans had gone through 6 dynasties prior to the first European of any substance coming into the land to make him or herself feel known. So all this concept about the pyramids, all that's nonsense. And I think that really, as our brother was saying, sure, we got to stop talking on certain levels. I believe that our discussion at this point is counterproductive. See, we're not about asking them, was Egyptians black? That's yesterday's discussion. See, we dealt with that yesterday. Whether or not you're up to the par is your business, okay? You missed a train. I didn't. I was on that train. And so now we have got to be about the formation of a nation in terms of our thought process. And this is why the Moors become so very important to us, because if you do not understand the Moors, it's very difficult for us as a people to understand why we're in the position that we're in today. You cannot understand why we're in the position we're in today if you don't understand what happened in 1492. You cannot understand what happened in 1492 if you don't understand the Crusades. You cannot understand the Crusades if you don't understand the Moors. Because the very nature of the knowledge that the Crusaders, the Christian Europeans, got of the riches of the East, why Columbus was on the seas in the first place hundreds of years later, was because of what the Moors had brought into Spain. And when you look at European powers, see, here's another way that you can look into it. See, this is why the 2 areas that they want to keep black folk out of in education is social studies and language arts. It's the 2 areas that we have to conquer. Math, science, all that's important, but those are all physical sciences that we can master anyway. But you see, social studies tells you what happened. Language arts puts it in a language that tells you what happened. And see, we're not suffering from a misunderstanding of science nor of math. We are suffering from a misunderstanding of ourselves and how to express ourselves, which falls into the category of social studies and language arts. So when I was looking for an area to find myself in Board of Ed, I immediately went to social studies because I understood that revolutionary things could happen, and they are happening. Because you got to understand the sequence of events in history. You have to see the sequence. And when you see sequence, then everything else comes to be an understanding. The Jektonites coming down into this area then mix with these African folk, and these are the people who would later become the Saddam Husseins, but deeply entrenched in an African thought. See, even Saddam Hussein is an African man, even if not by complexion, which he is by complexion. But even if they were to claim that because of their complexion, they still lived a culture that was African-based, because they as a people had no culture. They brought no culture with them. They brought no formed pattern of behavior, because it was so easy to adapt to the behavior of African people, because that's where the culture was. That's where the civilization was. That's where measurement occurred. And where measurement occurred comes mathematics and science and the formations of technology, and that's what brings the civilization through. So it's important that we understand these things in terms of understanding who we are as a people today. For instance, we teach that the Western civilization is based on the Aristotelian model. Aristotle's model of so-called democracy and all this other stuff that they taught, this is what the Western world is based on. But what they don't tell you is that it was the Moors that translated the works of the Greeks, who then taught the European Aristotle. See, we don't know that. We think that Europeans sat and studied Aristotle. They didn't. They couldn't read. The time of Moorish Spain, 99% of Europe was illiterate. Kings and queens could not read and write. They were living in barns. You see all these castles that they say these kings, those were castles built by Moors that when Europeans moved out and moved further south upon attack by Christians, they took over those. They didn't build those castles and all that other stuff. Moat with alligators. Ain't no alligators in Europe. So how are you even going to put alligators in the moat if you don't have the animal in your backyard in the first place? You see, whenever you see lions, you know you're dealing with Africa, even in The Wizard of Oz. When you hear people saying they threw people to the lions, you know you're dealing with an African concept, if not at least the lions. Because there are no lions anyplace in the world but in Africa. And as you go through Meta Nature, you will see the same thing, okay? As we begin to develop these thoughts, I think that we'll be able to move out. Now, let me ask, because I see some hands just shot up. Will we accept questions? Because normally I just open it up for a discussion. Okay, so we'll go straight, and then I'll give chance for everyone to have their say. Believe me, don't believe a word I say. Not a word. You see, I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to present information, and that's very important, because too many of us, as we come before you, we get insulted if you don't accept it. See, I don't have no problem, because I've done the research. And I know that once you challenge what we say, which I love, I'm going to challenge you to read up on it. And because I know and I'm confident that you're going to come up with the same concepts that I've come up with. We're living an illusion out here. We really are living an illusion. We are living a magician's world, like the Wiz, you know. And people have presented a world to us, and like Wade Noble says, power is the ability to define someone's reality and have them accept that reality. And we are a people who for years, people have been defining who we are, and we've been accepting it. Once you tell somebody, no, I don't think that's who I am, they've lost all power over you. Whether you realize or not, and it doesn't make a difference if you're a homeless person in Newark or if you're an IBM executive. Once you say that you don't have the power to define who I am, you've taken all power. Now, they can imprison you, they can physically do things to you, but they have no power over you. Because if you're not afraid of death, then you are the most powerful person around. Because the lack of the fear of death, and I'm not saying not to have a fear of death, because I fear death. I fear things. But I don't ask you measure me by the amount of my fear. Judge me by the amount of my courage. Because it's courage that then negates fear. So I'm a human being. In fact, I worry about people who say that they're not afraid of anything. In fact, I try to stay away from people who say they're not afraid, because they put themselves in situations where they really don't care what the outcome is. See, I care about what the outcome is. And I want to teach our children to care about what the outcome is. You see, I'm not a kamikaze. And I'm not a martyr. I want to live. I want to live a long life. As Dr. King said, longevity has its place. You see? I'd like to see my children to be 30 years old. But at the same time, if at that cost it costs me my pride and dignity, you can forget that. You can take this, because I'm going to take at least 6 with me. This is the kind of mentality that we have to face for our future. Because that militia is doing a lot more than what we see in Texas. Believe me that. And let me tell you something else. I'm for gun control. Control your gun. You see, I'm not going to tell our community to sell our guns back when I know that they are collecting guns by the dozens every day. You got to be out of your mind to tell the young people get rid of your guns. You see, because I'm not buying back nothing. Ain't nothing in Toys R Us worth with gun. You see what I'm saying? I'm for gun control. In fact, the Constitution almost demands that you bear arms. Okay? So we got to be careful what we tell our children. I'm for gun control. Control your gun. The Moors, as we see them developing and as we look at their development across the world, what we have to do is we have to break it up into certain areas. When we look at this and we understand who the peoples were in terms of who the Moors were, what we begin to do is just look at the word Moor, because they will try to tell you a lot of things about the word Moor. They are now even trying. I mean, I've heard them say actually, and in books, I'm talking about books that we give our children, that the peoples of North Africa were dark complexion Caucasian. No, I'm telling you, I saw it this year. I could give you the company's name. I've seen this. And they got it all up in this, and they got maps on it where they break up the people, and they have peoples up in here that they would even dare say that they were Vandals. And historically speaking, the Vandals and the Visigoths came down in here, but they never were in control of North Africa at the time that they're saying, and they're not in control of North Africa now. But you see, again, if we're not writing the books, then we can't say, it's like that Paul Revere's horse. Paul Revere's horse was having a discussion with the other horses in the stable. And Paul Revere's horse said, if I had written that story, I'd have been the hero, because I'm the one that carried him through the town in the first place. So Paul Revere is not, but it's according to who writes the story. The horse was the hero in that story, but Paul Revere got the credit. And the same is true in terms of our history. It's all according to who's writing the books, and this is why they are doing so many different things to the history books, and what they're doing to Molefi Asante, and what they're doing to our brother Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, and to all of the others in the attacks, because they understand what the Melanic figure is. And I'm telling you now that if this community, if our community, and if our children could get a sense of who they were, our children could do in the classroom what Tiger Woods is going to do on the golf course. Now, putting aside all of the brother's personal feelings and beliefs and all the rest of that, and looking at him as a golfer, you can't get better. Not only can't you get better, but he is going to find new and inventive ways of playing golf that has never been seen before. Just as we did in basketball, just as we did in baseball, just as we do in every sport, just as we're doing what our brother John Singleton is doing in the arts, and what our brother Spike Lee is doing, and our sisters are doing, Terry McMillan and all the others. They're bringing things to another level. I've seen Spike Lee do things to that camera, use it in a way that I've never seen people use it before. And I'm saying that we're going to bring things to everything we touch is the same thing that the Moors did. But you have to understand what the Moors did to understand exactly the role that they played in history. Because some of us have Moorish blood in us. And because we cannot place it right, we do not put it all together again. It was Napoleon himself who commented that Africa begins at the Pyrenees. Now, the Pyrenees is the mountain range that is somewhere between Spain and Portugal. Now, Napoleon III, on his inspection of that area, said, because, when the show came out, Hunchback of Notre Dame, I kept telling, I really didn't want to take them. I really didn't want to take my family to see it, but I understand pressure, you see, and I bend and I twist, but I wasn't going to let it go. So I kept saying before the movie, and even during the movie, I kept saying, I want you to look, and I want you to figure out, why is Esmeralda so dark? That's all I kept saying. Why is Esmeralda so dark? Because I wanted my young ones to go into the movie house understanding that there was something they were looking for. They were looking to find out why Esmeralda was so dark. Why was Esmeralda so mistreated, she and her people, in that area of Europe where they were living, in the Hunchback of Notre Dame, the way in which the people treated these so-called gypsies? You see? Now, this is what Malcolm was talking about when he was talking about language. See, language is very important because to understand who the gypsies were, all you have to do is one very important thing, but if you don't do it, you're going to miss it. But if you do it, it's the whole thing. All you got to do is put an E before gypsies. And then you understand who the gypsies were, and you'll understand why Esmeralda was so dark, because they were the Moors. They were the Egyptians. They were the Moors who had been in Europe and who, after being chased out, became despised because of what they contributed to the community. That is why you'll notice that the gypsies were always reading palms. They were much into astronomy. They were very much into spirituality. They were much into the structure of the society. Why? Because they brought forward this wisdom and knowledge from Africa into Europe. And one of the first things that the European males wanted to do when they wanted to take over the civilization, the Visigoths and the Vandals, was they had to break the power of the woman. This is why it's important to understand that the concept of burning women at the stake didn't happen in Salem, Massachusetts. In fact, that's why Europeans were kicked out of Europe in the first place, because the people were saying, you know, you can't go around burning your woman just because she had an orgasm. Yeah, I mean, that happens sometimes, you know. If you just happen to last long enough, that can happen. But this is what they were doing. If anything occurred out of the ordinary, they would... Homosexuals, we have the term we call faggot. Now, where did the word faggot come from? Faggot came from the fact that in Europe, when someone was of homosexual or gay preference, what the community did is that they made them go out and collect their own sticks that they would burn them at the stake for. And little sticks, twigs, are called faggots. So as they would send these individuals of homosexual or gay or lesbian background out to collect sticks, instead of just saying collect the faggots, they started calling them the faggots. And that's where the word came from. See, we have to understand language. If you don't understand language, you're going to miss things. Because we are living an illusion here. And that is because we've allowed people to define us. And we've accepted their definition. Part of the reason why we have many people celebrating Mother's Day today is because they have accepted a definition. Why? Because Europeans don't treat their mothers right. Therefore, they got to have a day where they say, okay, we're not going to whip you today, Ma. That's how we're going to celebrate Mother's Day. We're not going to whip you. We as an African people, we have sat at the feet of our mothers all our lives. Look at our music. Today, Kiss Alone has nothing but music that we played dedicated to our mothers. Tell me how many songs they have dedicated to their mothers. Think about it. How many songs Europeans have dedicated to their mothers? They may have some, but they don't have, like, they can't play the whole radio day with them like they can do in Kiss FM. But that is because we are a people who have always understood what honor is. Honor is an everyday thing. And the festivity of what we have... See, we never celebrated individuals, which is Western civilization bound. They celebrate individuals. Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas Day is Christ, and Easter is Christ. We celebrated events, such as harvests, such as days of our ancestors. But we never celebrated people days the way they celebrate this. Why? Because it's all commercial. Making all this money today, like the brother was breaking down. All these flowers, all these other things that they're going to be going out here, trying to convince your mother that you love her so tomorrow you can go out and you're not going to speak to her now for another week or two. See, it's not the way. In fact, most of the time, a lot of African folk, we all live together anyway. So we don't have to travel from another town and to see our mother because mother is with us, or at least somewhere within us. These are the kind of concept that the Moors just did not bring. This is a European concept. And what we've got to begin to do is look at the realities of what we're facing. The origins of the word Moor. Just let me give you some examples of the word Moor. There was a brother, or a gentleman by the name of Richard Hakluyt. He was a traveler in the 1400s who reported that in the old times the people of Africa were called Ethiops or Moors or Morens, which means that the word Moor was used for anybody of dark complexion. Like Ethiop means land of burnt faces. Moors meant black. In Spanish, mora is blackberry. Moreno is dark complexion. Moreno also means sweetheart. Mira, morena. You know, when you say morena in Spanish, sometimes that means sweetheart. Sometimes you say even negrita, that's sweetheart. Why? Because the African woman was the sweetheart of the nation. That is the woman who was held up, just like we hold up the European woman, the blonde, the skinny, all that stuff that we say is the model. In Africa, it was the African woman who was that model of what all perfection was. In French, moricard means dark skin. Morillon means black grape. In Italian, mora means Negro or Moorish female. Mora also means blackberry, which when you go to Spanish, mora means blackberry. And then you have moraiola, M-O-R-A-I-O-L-A, which means a black olive. So you have the derivation of the word more, so they can't get out of the concept of what the word meant. The word means black. You cannot put other people's faces up here, and say that they were light complexion Ethiopians. Ethiopian mean black face. So if you say light complexion Ethiopian, you're talking about a light complexion burnt face. But you see, when you're speaking English, English says that you can say what you want to because you control people's minds. So if you say it, it is. Like amen. Amen. We say amen means so be it. Amen does not mean so be it. Amen could never mean so be it in the Latin language. Amen means hidden waters that the Kemites gave to the Christian church, that in Latin, they just said, amen means so be it. So be it is a sentence. If you turn that around, so be it, you say it be so. It being the object or the subject, be is the verb, and so is the adverb. Nowhere in the Latin language do you have the derivation of amen. But you do have it in Kemet. So the language, obviously, they take words and say, this is what it means, and then it's accepted under those conditions. Every day, the Webster's Dictionary is being expanded. Every day is being expanded. It's just adding new words. Oh, that sounds good, put it in there. And people who make these decisions, if they say ain't is good English, ain't becomes good English. Why? They said is, not is. Who said is, so is? They said it. And because they said it, and because they have control over people's minds, it be so. But it don't have to be so. And once you say it's not so, it is not so. And that's power. And that's where we are in need of, is just defining ourselves as a people. We want to look at the early Moors. The early Moors, of course, again, looking at Sheikh Anta Diop's model, we know that if in life originating in this area of the world, Africans moved along the Happy Valley, or the Nile Valley, going north, and they branched over going west. So as they traveled north, certain branches of African folk coming through the Happy Valley also branch off west. This is in Sheikh Anta Diop's work, Black Africa. Just as they traveled north, they also traveled south and created the kingdoms of South Africa. The Monomotapa that would later become Monomotapa and the other civilizations of South Africa. They then would also island hop into Australia and New Zealand. Okay, Zena, I'm sorry to say this, but Zena is not a New Zealand. She's a European. Yeah, and it's very important. New Zealand is an African island. Tasmania is an African island. Australia is an African island. All of these areas are African islands, but when they've been around long enough, they can tell you and make you believe that they've been around a long time. Just like when you look at North Africa, I seen a program where the woman of light complexion was talking about the builders of the pyramids probably looked like her. I can tell you biologically why they couldn't have looked like her. Because when you dress a certain way, and in all of the friezes that we see people that are lightly dressed. If you are a light complexion and you stand in 110 degrees in the shade, you're going to get skin cancer. So you could not have been looking like that and been out in the sun without anything on. So you can't look like that because you would have died. Simple scientific principle. It had no emotion in this at all. I'm not wishing no harm on you. I'm just saying, let's look at this. Biologically, you cannot last in the sun for thousands of years and build pyramids. You can't do that. You die on top of the pyramid. It can't be done. You know? Say, yeah, exactly. You see, these are principles of science that once we get these down and it becomes grounded, then we sit and we start laughing at them. And if there's one thing Europeans don't like, they don't like to be laughed at. They don't mind you laughing with them as long as they're telling the joke, as long as they're not the joke. But I have to tell you, they are the joke. They're a very sad joke, because by now I'd be embarrassed to keep telling the same stories that they're telling and actually believe it. You know, my mother used to say, you're telling this story so convincingly, I could almost believe you know what you're talking about. This is how I feel about them. They play a good game. But as Dr. Clark informed Mary Lefkowitz on the tape that you've seen, you can only have a debate when there are two opinions. There are not two opinions here. There's only one, and the other is a fear of what that opinion really is. You see? So there's no argument here. But we as an African people have to ground ourselves in this and understand where the argument is and where it is not. My mama used to say, don't sweat the small change. And right now they are small change. Because even if they gave us everything we asked for, are we as a nation ready to do what we have to do in terms of assuming control? We need to understand nation building, and looking at the Moors helps us understand this. And this is why I'm looking at the Moors, and that's why I've gone from the Kemetic origin of the universe to the Dogon philosophy to the Moors. Because there's been a natural transgression in my studies to bring me to this level to be able to talk to you about all of the formation, because I can take you right back to the Kemites utilizing the Moors. So it's important that we see this connection. It's important to understand that these early African people can be broken up into different nations, but all people are one people. Don't lose sight of that. There's only one people on this planet. And because of climate, we differentiate ourselves phenotypically or morphologically. That's what happens to the human family. It's the same thing when you take an animal. You can take an animal in one condition, take them to another condition, and that animal, if it survives in its environment, will mutate itself according to its climate. If we teach this to our children in evolution classes, in 6th grade, we have books that teach what's called mutation. Mutation says that if you have a faded plant, that's called an albino plant. If you have a peacock without its colors, that's an albino peacock. If you have a cockroach, a white cockroach, that's an albino cockroach. But see, they stop there. They only deal with animals and plants because they know if they took it to the human level, they would have to make the mutation a European. So they stop in the plants and animals because they understand in continuing the story of organic life that which mutated itself from the human being became the European. And just like all other things, we are not the endangered species, by the way. We are endangered because humans are hunting us. The European is endangered because the sun is hunting them. And it's important to understand that by the year 3000, now I'm being nice because I'm a cosmic being, and I know I'm going to be around in another 1,000 years. I may not look like this, but I'm going to come back in another 1,000 years. So I know I'm here. And as an African being, you will never die. Not only will you never die, but you've been not only here a couple of times, but you've touched other galaxies a couple of times also. And as African people, when we were aware of ourselves and what we were able to do to our melanic state, we knew what galaxies we could tap into. It is my belief, and I'm going to end up with this as we go through this presentation, I believe that there were Africans who dared to go where no others went before. I believe Africans left this planet in ships and have been going through all the galaxies, and I'm going to explain that to you when we break down types of civilizations and how you draw your energy source and how we as an African people, like the brother said, we can get all this information we want to, get all culturally beside ourselves. But if we don't have the power to do something economically, and after you get the economics together, because remember, we had the culture and we had the economics. We got to get the military piece together. You see, because you may have all the money you want, all the culture you want, but if they got the big guns, it's like when you on that boat, And that man on the end is very haughty and proud. He says, I got the lifeboat. But that old dingy man on the end says, I got the gun, give up that boat. You see, it don't make a difference what you have. If someone can take it from you, then you might as well not have it. So as a nation, we have to start thinking of very serious things that make people very nervous. But we have to do it in a way that I'm not going to whisper it anymore. I really don't think there's a need to whisper. And I think that when we whisper, we're telling our children that either we're scared to speak out. Now, I understand there are times we have to speak to our family members alone. I have no problem with that. But I think we're whispering too much. And I think we're giving the children an impression that we're scared. And, we were the warriors of the world at one time, until the gun came along. The gun is a coward's instrument, by the way, even though we invented that too. Because the gun says that I can't tangle with you human to human because you'll hurt me. So I need to be able to stand back from you and fire something at you to knock you down before you can get to me, because I'm afraid for my life in your presence. So that then when you take this gun and then you multiply it so that you shoot more than one bullet, that tells me that not only am I afraid of you shooting once, I'm afraid I'm not going to kill you. I want to get you a couple times. So then comes the machine gun. Then comes the formation of being able to stand on one continent and press a button to send a missile over to another continent. Not only do I not want to have to see you when I kill you, I don't want to be on the same continent when I kill you. So all of this war power, all of these guns are their own demise. Because what African folk are going to do is going to find a new way to create war power. using what is out here now. But if we don't get into the state of nation building, then we're going to miss the whole point. So we've got to understand who we are and what we have done in situations that we have been. And Moors were pretty much in the same situation, except for a few differences that we are in today. There was a group of African folk in this area known as the Garamantes. The Garamantes were the Africans from whence Hannibal came out of. Hannibal was a descendant of the Garamantes. St. Augustine was a descendant of the Garamantes. The Moors were descendants of the Garamantes. The Garamantes basically are African folk having moved out into this area because of climate, developed a culture and a way of living. And these were known as the Garamantes. And this is where, these are the Africans that would later become the Moors, move up into Morocco and Mauritania, and then move up into Al-Andalus. Al-Andalus, as you look at the word Al, if you look at it, basically has the formation of introducing it's almost, from what I can understand, it is like in the Islamic language, it's like a prefix, meaning something, what was going to follow would be spiritual, like Al-Islam, Al-Kameh. See, there is a spiritual formation using the word Al, which of course our word is all. Al-Anda. Anda means to walk in Spanish. Luz. Someone want to help me? Light. So Al-Andalus means to walk in the spiritual light. And that's what they named this country, or this that we today call Spain and Portugal, but it was more than just that because it touched in the southern parts of France. So the Garamantes were the North Africans, and they were contemporaries of the Kemites. In other words, when the Kemites had their wonderful civilizations, the Garamantes were also doing things. See, we're caught up in Egypt where we look at the pyramids and we look at, but we don't know that at the same time Egypt was flourishing, so was Sudan and Ethiopia. So was northern parts of Africa, including Western Africa. But you see, Egypt is the doorway to African wisdom by the European. They entered Africa through Europe. That's the only thing they know. So therefore, to them, when they write books, everything deals with Egypt. But as an African people, there were things going on in Africa that's just as dynamic. I'll give you another example in social studies. We teach our children about Native Americans, but what we do is that we take the same route the Europeans took. We look at the Native Americans along the East Coast when we start teaching children about Native Americans. We don't teach them about what was going on down here. We teach them Native Americans the East Coast, basically where the 13 colonies were. The reality of it is that to understand a Native American nation, you've got to look at the Mississippi River. Because the Mississippi River to Native Americans was what Happy was to the Africans. You go to a place known as Cahokia, which when you look at the Mississippi River, it almost becomes like a Y and then it comes down. Cahokia is located in southern Illinois. It is the largest pyramid in the northern hemisphere. There are over 110 pyramids along the Mississippi River. For more information on that, there's a book called by Jack Weatherford called Native Roots, Chapter 2. It's called Pyramids Along the Mississippi. There is evidence of Ramses III on the Mississippi River. There's a book called Ramses III, Father of America. Get that book and you'll see. Ramses, 1,500 years before the Christian era. Evidence. There is evidence of Africans in Davenport, Illinois. Evidence of Africans in California. Evidence of Africans in New York State. Thousands of years before the European even came to this area. See, we get the impression, because of what they have introduced, that everything started happening in 1492. There was lively and real trade amongst Africans and Native Americans thousands of years before the European even left the caves 2,000 years BC. There is evidence in Cahokia, Illinois, of trade going on with Native Americans of Brazil. There is evidence in Cahokia of artifacts of Native Americans from Canada. There is evidence of an attempted unification of the Native American world amongst the Siouan world, the Muskegon world, and what is known as the Haudenosaunee or the Iroquoian. There is evidence of the three languages coming together, and Cahokia almost was like Washington, D.C. for Native Americans. That was the center point, and you find it right in the middle. You find evidence of all three languages spoken throughout the American hemisphere of Native American peoples in Cahokia, almost like it's a repository of information. This pyramid I'm talking about is called Monk's Mound. Why? Because Monk's Mound is called because when the Trappist monks came to this area, they sat on the pyramid and took it over. And they started dismantling the stones and all the other things that built the pyramid to build their cities. So now when you go to these areas here, you see what are called mounds. But what you don't know is these mounds were once pyramids prior to Europeans dismantling the stones and the bricks and the mortar to build their homes that you see today. Now this is real live history, and I would challenge anybody to refute it. Anybody. Because this is either here or it's not. It's either real or it's unreal, and if I am wrong, please correct me, because I want the right way. I don't want my way. I want the right way. But just as we study African people through what they experience, we think the only thing happening in this time is what's happening in Egypt. But there's in Cuba, if you read the book by Dr. Chancellor Williams, The Destruction of Black Civilization, he has a piece on Cuba. Central Africa, flourishing civilizations. In Africa, there are civilizations built on top of civilizations. The pyramids are much older than what they say. Not to mention the Sphinx. And when our children start getting into this wisdom and start bringing out their creative genius, and once the ancestors start tapping into their collective unconscious, they're going to be able to see things that we can't see, just like we're seeing things that those that came before us did not see. Not because anybody's better than the other, it's that every generation makes it better for the next. And so this work that we're doing now is as a roadmap. There is a curriculum here. A science curriculum, a math curriculum, language, arts, everything that our children are studying in school today can be brought in and can be done because, first of all, let me step back and tell you, there is no such thing as an African-centered curriculum. Now, let me explain to you what I mean by that. When African scholars sat down and wrote all of their treatises on science and math, they did not write it and say, this is for African people. When they wrote it for any cosmic mind that was in balance and ready to receive information. When the European came upon this information, they had to put their name on things, and they only put their name on things they understood. Theodosius in the 4th century, Justinian in 529, closed all of the temples of the Greek and African educational centers and burned the books. Not to mention, as we come up into 1492, Bishop Lander will do in America to Native American what Cardinal Cisneros did to the Moorish books in Spain. They destroyed the books. Now, when the emperors destroyed the knowledge of the Kemites and what the Greeks got out of the Kemites in 429 and in 529, they plunged Europe into what they call the Dark Ages. The Moors then brought this knowledge back in, having translated the work of the Egyptians, having translated, the Moors translated the works of the Greeks, not knowing they were translating the works of their own ancestors that the Greeks had misunderstood. Africans such as Ibn Rushd, who is known as Averroes, or Ibn Sina, who is known as Ibn Sin, or Avicenna, they read the works of the Greeks, and there is a piece, it's called Egyptian Sacred Science and Al-Islam. It's one of the books that I recommended on the list that you have that spoke about my coming here, where he takes every one of these writers and authors and thinkers and talks about how they felt about the Greeks. They literally turned inside out. Ibn Sina literally turned inside out the Greek thought to bring it back to the Kemetic level. In other words, what the Greeks got wrong, the Moors corrected to make right again. They studied the work of the Sumerians and the Akkadians, all of the ancient work the Moors sent around the world for the works of the Chinese, everybody, and translated these works. And they were well aware of all of this wisdom and all of this knowledge. And they were able to bring it back. Now, what happened? Africans, remember, at this time also are sharing knowledge with Native Americans, and Native Americans are sharing their wisdom with African people, because it's a two-way street now. See, a lot of Native Americans are getting very offended also, and I can kind of understand, because sometimes we as African people get excited with this wisdom. We do to Native Americans the same thing the Europeans do. Make it seem like Native Americans are just waiting on the coast for some wisdom to come. Native Americans were very much aware of their surroundings. They were very much aware of pharmacology and agriculture. They had their own over 250 different kinds of potatoes in South America. So they were well aware. But they did not have pyramid building technology. They didn't have that. And the evidence of that is that it appeared when we see Africans coming to this part of the world. Nothing is born overnight. You can't build a pyramid overnight. It takes time to study. It takes time to master the math and the science, and then you can build things. So obviously there was a trade going on in terms of wisdom. So now the wisdom of the Moors and the wisdom of the Native American is burnt by Europeans, who, one of the bishops, Cisneros, had a bonfire, and in the middle of the public courtyard in Granada in August of 1492, which is a couple of months before Columbus is on the sea, they burned over 800,000 Moorish transcripts on science, math, and language arts. And what I'm telling us now is this: we are now living in Europe's second dark age. Because of the burning of those books back then, it took 500 years. There are treatises that show that Moors understood that if you take the nucleus, if you split the nucleus of certain elements and then contain those split nuclei in a contained area and then let off the detonation, you would have a mighty event. They never said explosion. It took them 500 years for Einstein to understand that concept, and that is the atom bomb. That is what is known as fission in science. Africans understood this way back then. And this is in their Moorish writings. If you want to see this, Ivan Van Sertima's piece, The Golden Age of the Moors, a book to look at, because he has a nice breakdown of different essays that talk about the Moors. This is the kind of information that we need to understand in order to move forward with our young people. So the Garamantes are the early peoples that would later become the Moors. There is also a Kemetic and Dogon connection. It's important to know that the people of North Africa were the neighbors of the Kemites, and that during the occupation of Spain, the Moors from Mauritania displayed with considerable credit the grandeur of the collective African civilization and culture. But along the scene comes these Europeans. Remember, it was the Visigoths, these Germanic peoples coming up out of this area here, blonde hair, blue-eyed people, coming down out of this area here, that begin to conquer everything they come upon. In fact, they were the ones that destroyed the Roman Empire. And even the Romans called them barbarians. And if the Romans called them barbarians, well, you know the evidence of the word, because we got a word now called vandal. And you know what a vandal is, and that's what they were. They were vandals. That's where the word comes from. They come down and they destroy, and they come down into other parts. The Ostrogoths go east, the Visigoths go west. So as they come down, the Ostrogoths come this way, the Visigoths come this way, and they end up in the 400s and the 500s, somewhere here in Spain. And they're ruling Spain for a good 200 years before in 710, a brother by the name of Tarif, who is one of the administrators, the leaders, the lieutenants, a very important military leader of Tariq's army of Morocco. He goes in 710, July 710. Tarif, an officer in General Tariq's army, goes on a reconnaissance mission. Because now here's something else. Now it's going to come right up into this present time right now. Count Julian and Roderick, okay? Roderick is the Visigothic king that is ruling Spain. And Count Julian is a prince. He's someone of value. He's someone who has a daughter, who sends his daughter into the court of Roderick to be trained to become a lady. It is said, this is the way the story goes, that Roderick violated Count Julian's daughter. He raped her. And Count Julian got very upset. And this is what started it. Because he whistled over to the Africans here. He said, look, I got something for you now. He called him forward, and that's when Tarif went up to do a reconnaissance. He spoke to Julian to see what he was coming from, to see, why are you giving up all this land here? It all came, the story comes down that it was because of his daughter. Tarif, and by the way, that's where we get the word, the name Tarif, when you have to pay a tariff, was because where Tarif landed, Europeans had to pay a tariff from that point on in order to make that movement into that part of the land. So the word tariff comes out of Tarif. Okay, the next year, there's a brother by the name of Tariq ibn Ziyad ibn Allah ibn Walgu. Now, you know that's an African right there by how many names he's got. And now you know where the Hispanics get it from. When they had this joke about, my name is Jose Moreno, going to Gonzalez, Alvarez. Well, that's where they got it from. Because before that, they were just so-and-so of this, so-and-so of this. But see, when you get this concept of naming yourself after different elements, then you come forward with these concepts. In 711, Tariq with Berbers, who are Africans, by the way, don't let them tell you that Berbers are light-complexioned people. That's where they get the word from, barbers, barbarians. Romans call Africans barbarians. And that word, that's why it's called the Barbary Coast in that area, because they said along this coast there are barbarians, Berbers. These are African people here. This is even before there were light-complexioned people here. Tariq goes over, and he disembarks near a rocky place. He has 7,000 men, 6,700 are Africans, and 300 are Arab translators. He makes his way into the land. There's a rocky place that was at that time called Gebel Tariq, which today we call Gibraltar. Gibral is the contaminated form of Gebel, and Tariq, which is the name of the general. Gebel Tariq became Gibraltar. In August of 711, he won a decisive victory over the Visigothic army. And by the way, if your name is Medina, that's a Moorish name. Your name is Alvarez, anything with Al in it, Alfred, Albert, that's all Moorish, that's all African. Your name is Morris, Maurice, Morristown, anything like that, Gouverneur Morris, all that's African. All of that is African. Whenever you see the word Moor, you're dealing with an African. Lissim Moor, Kalim Moor, whatever Moor is African. In August of 711, he won a decisive victory over the Visigothic army. It was during this conflict that Roderick, the last Visigothic king, was killed. Basically, there are three Moorish dynasties in Al-Andalus. Basically, you have from 710 to 1086, you have what is known as the Umayyad, that was interrupted by Abbasid. You know those are both African. Ummah. Wherever you have Ummah. Ma. Maya. Just look at ma. That's African. This is etymology. This is language. This is where we move away from them trying to give us these illusions and understanding the etymological movement of wisdom. Where you have the ma sound, you have the African concept of Moor. You have the Abbasi, Abba, Abu, Abba, Abat, coming out of the Ethiopic language. Abba, Baba. It comes out of the African concept. So the first dynasty, basically from 710 to 1086, approximately 376 years, the Umayyad and the Abbasid dynasty. From 1086 until 1194, you have the Almoravid, Avid. Don't have to tell you any more about that. They eventually come out as the Morabites. But basically, Al-Mor, when you see this, you know you're dealing with an African. From the year 1194 until 1492, Al-Mohade. Al-Mo. Again, Hade. Now, all of this I have on a curriculum study guide, so if you're a little bit, in terms of my writing, I know I'm just here and there. I like to write in concepts. So approximately from 710 until 1492, you have African ruling Spain, France, parts of Italy, Sicily. See, I've often said that what happened in Bensonhurst and what happened in Howard Beach, that was black on black crime. They don't really like to say things like that, but if you're Sicilian, you black. You black just like if you were Puerto Rican. You black just like if you were from the Caribbean somewhere. And when you look at them, you can see the Africanness in them. And part of what makes them feel towards us, what they feel towards us, is that innate resentment to know that they're African. You know, but the unfortunate thing is they don't know that the very thing that makes them, if they are great is the African blood. See, everybody's trying to be Visigothic. You know, when I come upon people who talk about how they come from Europe, I always like to play that Visigothic Vandal thing on them. You know, what are you, a Visigoth or a Vandal? Because you've got to be one of the two if you're going to claim European blood. Because if you standing here just as dark as I am, with hair very curly like mine, you better believe that you're black. Whether you have convinced yourself that you're not or not is a whole other story altogether. So we have these three dynasties in Africa that literally they are doing a number of things, and they are developing the nation. In terms of Moorish civilization, when we look at women in Al-Andalus, what we notice in terms of women is that women have total equality. And this is something that's very difficult for some people to understand in terms of the role that women played. We find doctors, we find lawyers. They walked about the streets freely. And one of the problems that the Moorish Muslims had with the other parts of the Islamic world was the role that women played. You see, because again, these Jektonites brought back their barbarity and their off-centered feelings towards women. And that's what is in Islam today. Not in all of Islam, but those parts of Islam that will denigrate a woman clearly are in the throes of the Jektonide, the Visigothic concept of women's inferiority. So women had a very important role in terms of the society itself. The city of Cordova. In terms of looking at Moorish civilization, we look at the city of Cordova, and we notice that the Moorish city of Cordova, which is often regarded as the medieval world's most cosmopolitan and sophisticated city, possessed in the 10th century, the 900s. It has 1,600 mosques, 900 public baths, 213,077 middle-class homes, 60,300 mansions, and 80,455 shops. Wealthier homes consisted of 2 floors, a library in each home, a garden, hot and cold running water, air conditioning in the summer, and heat in the winter. The population of Cordova was estimated between 500,000 to 1 million residents. The Spanish city of Cordova in the 10th century was very much like a modern city. Its streets were well paved. Their streets were paved. The sidewalks were raised for the pedestrians. And at night, you could walk for 10 miles by the light of lamps, flanked by uninterrupted extents of buildings. This is Cordova in the 900s. Europe would not see this for another 400 years. This is just the city of Cordova alone. Now, there is something that I wanted to do in terms of making a connection between the ostrich in Kemet, the ostrich in Dogon, and the ostrich in the Moorish civilization, because on the shield, on the emblem of the family crest, for instance, a lot of Moors had the ostrich. Now, the ostrich can only be found in Africa. Now, of course, you can find a Great Adventure, but that's today. See, and when children see ostrich in Great Adventure, they think that it could be indigenous to America. See, children don't know the difference. Children don't know the only place you can find an ostrich is like the lion. You can only find a lion in Africa. You will only find an ostrich in Africa. That's the only place that you will find ostriches. So wherever you see an emblem or a symbol of an ostrich, it has to relate back to an African concept no matter what. And these are some of the principles that we have to look at in terms of wisdom and knowledge. The ostrich feather, of course, in the Kemetic legacy was Ma'at. Ma'at representing just, truth, balance, righteousness, and all things that are just and right. The ostrich in the Dogon civilization represented a number of things. For one thing, the ostrich runs in a zigzag pattern. So does the universe. The Sirius B and Sirius A move with each other in a zigzag position. Cosmos in the elliptical form, as they travel through the universe, they travel in a zigzag position. But not just that, if you look at the crown of the Kemites, you'll notice that the white crown is shaped like an egg, which, by the way, is the ostrich egg. The Hogan of Dogon, the leader, the spiritual and the fundamental leader of the Dogon nation, the Hogan, on his headpiece is also shaped like an egg, and it's an ostrich egg. So there's a relationship in terms of the ostrich and the role that it plays in Kemet, in Dogon, or in Mali, and also in the Moors. So there's a connection here that we cannot look at. In fact, even today, it is a sacred symbol which often has totemic significance among the people in Africa, especially in the Sahel and the Cushitic areas. So you can see that there is a relationship between the ostrich and the peoples of this area here. So when you find an ostrich up here, you know it came from here. The Mozarabs. The Mozarabs are individuals who were Catholics who adopted the social customs of the Moors and Arabs. Those peoples of Spanish background that they just love the Moorish culture. So, like we got some people amongst us like this that love the European culture. You see? And they identify, they speak the language, they dress the dress, they talk the talk. Exactly. Also, I heard a brother from Haiti once say that 95% of Haiti is Roman Catholic. 100% of Haiti is Roudan. You see? So that when the lights go out, even baby doc go to priest and priestess. You see? This is what the Mozarabs were. The Mozarabs were people who, while they kept their own Spanish flavor, they adopted the ways of the Moors. They studied the Moorish science and math. They became Moors, but at the same time they remained who they were, so they were Mozarabs. Mo, of course, I don't have to tell you what that is, the Moor, and Arabs. So they were Mozarabs. And as a result, the Mozarabs, like the Jews, were entitled to their own legal system, complete with their own magistrates and own laws. Now, that's another key piece about African folk. You see, we got up in this area here. We didn't tell anybody you had to be a Muslim. We said, be what you are. Whatever you are, if you live the legacy of your spiritual faith, you will be a good person. And whatever makes you who you are, just keep on being that. You don't have to be what I am because you're not me. See, they don't have that concept. You must be them. You must act like them. You must talk like them. And anything that acts out of that is xenophobic in nature. They become fearful of you. Even if you look silly with a blonde wig and you're wearing all their clothes but your black face, they're more comfortable with that than when the sister has the dreads or when the sister or the brother has the braids. You see, that is very threatening to them. When you wear African clothes, that's very threatening to them. See, they always have to know where that outfit come from. Well, the same place your outfit came from. You know, I mean, where did your outfit come from, you know? Costume sometimes. Yeah, costume, yeah. You know, when you really look at it, you're the one in the monkey suit. So what are you talking about, you know? Because, you know, ties are phallic symbols. Ties are penises. And the knot are the testicles. And that's why men wear them. And that's why women look so silly when they have them on. Because they're upside down obelisks. Ties are upside down obelisks, and you notice that they all come to a point, just like an obelisk. That's where it came from. That is a remnant of their contaminated concepts of what Africans gave them. Now let's look at adoptionism, because this really is at the heart of probably what split the church in the first place, but what mandated the Moors to bring in this new concept of spirituality, because the Moors, the Islamic faith really was moving away from what the Christians and the Jews had messed up. So many of the Africans in the Saudi Arabian area were trying to tell folk, look, you got Christianity wrong. You got Judaism wrong. Now I'm going to take the best of both of your faith system and try to show you really what the God concept is. It is called adoptionism, and that's what they did in parts of Al-Andalus, which means that Jesus Christ was an extraordinary and supernatural prophet, but he was 100% human being, whereas the European gave him half man and half God. You see, what that did is it made people worship, exactly, and it became a cult. Africans did not have a cult. A cult is a faith system. The biggest cult in the world is Christianity, because the center of your faith system is built on an individual as opposed to on a God concept. African folk were always on a God concept. If anything became pagan, it was the Roman Catholic Church, because they were the ones that created the idols. See, the Romans began the concept of idols because they never understood what the natures were in the Kemetic philosophy. They didn't understand pantheism. They didn't understand having one God, and then that one God shows him and herself in everything that exists. See, that's pantheism. One God, and this one God shows itself in everything on earth. For instance, let me give you some examples. In the dog has a very special gift, the gift of smell. That's a God-given gift. He can smell, and that's why he becomes the judge. That's why Impu or Anubis becomes the judge, because dogs can tell right from wrong. Right at that point that something is about to die, they know the difference between a second life and the second it's going to die. Therefore, dogs have a God-given gift of smell. Now, Kemites, Africans, do not worship the dog. They worship the ability to smell, because that's the God-given gift. Africans say, if only I could have that discriminatory power. So when they look at the dog, they respect the gift that God has given the dog. In the bird is eyesight. A falcon can be way up and can see a worm, can be way up and see things way down. Africans say, wow, if I just had that God-given gift, special gift, given by a creative force to a bird, to a falcon, to Tehuti the ibis bird, you see, to the Bennu bird, this gift of sight, the ability to see, the eye of Heru. The cat, the agility. I saw a cat fall out 9 stories, hit the ground, dash off. That ability, because as it fell, it measured its fall and measured its gravity. And by the time it hit the ground, it bounced up and was able to move. The agility of a cat. That's a God-given gift. Didn't worship the cat. Worship the agility of the cat, hoping that maybe it could rub off on me. You see. Let's look at the ostrich. I'm sorry, not the ostrich, the owl. The owl has the ability to see in the dark. It's not the smartest bird in the world, by the way, but it has a gift. And that God-given gift is the ability to see in the dark. And Africans said, wow, seeing light is like having knowledge. In the dark is where ignorance is. So the owl has the ability to see light in the dark. In other words, it can see intelligence in darkness. It can pull the sense out the nonsense. But not just that, the owl also has the unique ability to turn its head 360 degrees. So not only can it see light in the dark, but it can see all angles of everything. So Africans said, wow, if I could have that gift. I don't worship the owl, but I worship the gift that God has given the owl, hoping that if I can be one with owl, I can have the gift that owl has. So African folk always work towards attempting to look at nature as a pantheistic, that everything in nature has God in it, and that if we can tie our God into their God, then we become one with nature, and that formation of balance becomes ma'at. Very simple. People in the community. Nothing difficult. The greatest teachers in the world have been those that took complex issues and made them simple. Whenever you sit before a professor and things are getting more difficult, get out that class. Because he is trying to impress you with how much he really does not know. Because if he made it simple, you would know what he knows. And you would be like God. Because that's the whole thing in that thing going on in the Garden of Eden. You see, they knew that if you touch of some things, you'll be like me. Just like the master on plantation said, if you read book, you'll be like me. Therefore, it is forbidden. These are the concepts as we begin to develop ourselves in our classrooms, and we see it's very simple. I always tell anyone I speak with, if I'm making it difficult for you, I am not doing my job. My job is when I can speak to those who have not gone to what we call school and can understand my word. That's what made Christ who he was. The ability to take the parable. And if you're talking to fishermen, you're talking fisherman language. If you're talking to undertakers, you're talking undertaker language. Whatever language, whoever you're speaking to, you transform yourself into that language. And then you get to be understood. Because this wisdom amongst African folk, while amongst many, when we look at it, we have like almost an elite class in Egypt, an elite class amongst the Dogon, elite class. But the reality is that those who became the elite became elite by studying what the masses of the people did. See, they just didn't do what they did on their own. They studied the masses of the people, and the masses of the people lived this wisdom. So that when you talk about math and you talk about science, all you got to do is go to a farmer. And a farmer on a farm doing his crop is putting into the same evidence that a master teacher would in an academic area. In other words, it's simple thoughts. It's not difficult. This is not difficult. But it is difficult because they know that once we get a hold of this wisdom and we get to know this stuff, we're going to take it to a level where they can't go. See, the